Welcome aboard, friends. You're now tuned into Potter Paradox. We're super excited to share today's story with you. What if Dobby kidnapped baby Harry before Dumbledore left him at the Dursleys and raised him in a hidden elf kingdom? If you enjoy what we do here, the best way to support us is by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We read every comment. Ready? Let's go. Chapter 1, The Forbidden Rescue. Dobby pressed his long, bat-like ears against the drawing-room door, barely daring to breathe. The Malfoys never noticed house elves. They were like furniture that occasionally moved, but tonight felt different. The air crackled with tension and something Dobby couldn't name. "The Dark Lord is gone," Lucius Malfoy's voice slithered through the gap beneath the door. "Defeated by a baby. Can you believe it, Narcissa? A baby. What happened to the child?" Narcissa asked, her voice cooler, more calculating than her husband's. "Dumbledore's taken him. Word is he's leaving the boy with Muggle relatives tonight." Dobby's tennis ball eyes widened. The Potter baby, the one whose parents had been murdered just hours ago. The wizarding world was already buzzing with the news, even the house elves whispered about it in the kitchen when the masters weren't looking. "Good riddance," Lucius sneered. "Let the boy rot with Muggles. When the Dark Lord returns, and mark my words, he will, the Potter brat will be powerless, raised without knowledge of his heritage." Something twisted inside Dobby's chest. He'd never felt this before, this urge to disobey, to interfere. House elves weren't supposed to care about wizard politics. They weren't supposed to take sides. But the words, "rot with Muggles," echoed in his head as he scurried back to the kitchen. Dobby had seen how Lucius treated those he considered beneath him. If these Muggle relatives were anything like what the Malfoys described Muggles to be, the Potter baby would suffer. And suddenly, as if someone had lit a lantern in his mind, Dobby remembered something from the ancient elf lore. Stories whispered between elves when no wizards could hear. Tales of a time when elves weren't servants but equals, before the binding contracts, before wizards took their freedom. And a prophecy, a half-forgotten prophecy about a child of two worlds who would restore what was broken. Could it be? Dobby's hands trembled as he mechanically polished silver that didn't need polishing. The Potter boy had defeated the darkest wizard alive as a baby. That wasn't normal wizard magic. That was something else. Dobby needed to think, but there wasn't time. If Dumbledore was moving the baby tonight, Dobby had to act now. What he was considering broke every rule house elves lived by. But the pull of the prophecy, the chance to save a child from misery, and perhaps save elf-kind too, it was too powerful to resist. He waited until the Malfoys retired to their bedchambers. The clock struck midnight. Dobby closed his eyes, focusing on the mansion's protective enchantments. Being bound to the family gave him unique access. He could come and go while other magical beings couldn't. But where he was planning to go next, he wasn't supposed to. With a crack that he muffled with a dish towel, Dobby disappeared from Malfoy Manor. He reappeared on a quiet suburban street lined with identical houses. Privet Drive, Little Whinging. Dobby had never been here before, but he'd heard Lucius mention it while reading correspondence. House elves remembered everything their master said, even the things said in passing. Dobby hid behind a hedge, his heart pounding against his ribcage. He'd never defied orders like this. Never acted independently on something so significant. He could be close-ed for this. Or worse. But then he saw them, three figures at the end of the street. Even from a distance, Dobby recognized Albus Dumbledore from the chocolate frog cards Draco collected. The tall figure beside him must be the half-giant, Hagrid. And the third, a severe-looking witch in emerald robes. Between them, a small bundle. "Are you sure about this, Albus?" the witch was saying, her voice carrying in the quiet night. "I've watched these Muggles all day. They're the worst sort." "They're his only family," Dumbledore replied. "He'll be safe here. The blood protection will shield him until he's of age." Dobby crept closer, keeping to the shadows. The half-giant was sobbing, cradling the bundle before reluctantly handing it to Dumbledore. There, Hagrid, Dumbledore said gently. It's not goodbye forever. He'll be joining us at Hogwarts before we know it. Dobby watched as Dumbledore placed the bundle, the baby, on the doorstep of number 4. The wizard placed a letter atop the blankets, then stepped back. Good luck, Harry Potter, Dumbledore whispered. The 3 figures retreated. Dumbledore clicked a strange device, and the streetlights relit one by one. A moment later, the witch and half-giant were gone. Dumbledore took one last look at the bundle on the doorstep, then vanished with a swish of his cloak. Dobby waited, barely breathing, counting to 100 to be sure they wouldn't return. Then he darted across the street. The baby was sleeping peacefully despite the November chill. A lightning-shaped scar marked his forehead, still fresh and red against his pale skin. Dobby carefully lifted the letter and broke the seal. House elves weren't supposed to read wizard correspondence, but nothing about tonight was following the rules. The letter confirmed everything. This baby was Harry Potter, the boy who lived. The one who had somehow defeated the Dark Lord. And Dumbledore was leaving him with these muggles, his aunt and uncle, who, according to the stern witch, were the worst sort. Dobby looked at the baby's face, so innocent, so unaware of his fame, of the fate being decided for him. Then he glanced at the dark house looming behind them. No lights, no one waiting up for a recently orphaned nephew. Just cold darkness. It was wrong. All wrong. Dobby made his decision in an instant. He tucked the letter into his tea towel, then gently, carefully lifted baby Harry from the bundle of blankets. Harry Potter must not stay here, he whispered to the sleeping infant. Harry Potter is special. Harry Potter belongs where his magic can grow free. There was only one place Dobby knew of where that could happen. A place no wizard had entered in centuries. A place that existed in the in-between spaces of the world, hidden from both magical and muggle eyes. Tir na Nog. The hidden kingdom of the free elves. Getting there wouldn't be easy. Dobby would be breaking the most sacred elf law, revealing the sanctuary to an outsider. But as he looked at the baby's face, illuminated by moonlight, he knew this was what he was meant to do. Hold tight, Harry Potter, Dobby whispered, cradling the baby close. Dobby is taking you home. With a crack louder than he intended, Dobby disappeared with the boy who lived, leaving only an empty blanket on the doorstep of number 4, Privet Drive. The journey to Tir na Nog wasn't like normal apparition. It required passing through layers of magic, ancient barriers designed to keep wizards out. Dobby felt them resisting as he pushed through, the baby clutched tightly to his chest. Almost there, Harry Potter, Dobby wheezed as magic pressed in around them, checking, testing. Normally, a human would be rejected instantly, spat back out into the normal world with no memory of the attempt. But Harry was no ordinary human. The magic seemed to hesitate around him, curious rather than hostile. With a final push, they broke through. The oppressive darkness gave way to soft, silvery light. Dobby staggered, dizzy from the effort, but kept his grip on the baby. They stood at the edge of a vast forest, trees taller and more ancient than any in the human world. Their leaves shimmered with a faint blue luminescence, casting the forest floor in ethereal light. In the distance, nestled among the massive trunks, Dobby could see the glittering spires of the elf city. We made it, Harry Potter, Dobby whispered, relieved but also terrified of what would come next. The baby stirred, opening his eyes. Bright green, they reflected the magical light around them. Harry didn't cry as might be expected. Instead, he reached up one tiny hand and touched Dobby's face with a curious pat. Dobby felt tears well up. Dobby will protect Harry Potter. Dobby promises. Moving quickly but carefully, Dobby carried Harry through the forest toward the city. He knew they'd be spotted soon. The border guards would have felt the breach, would be coming to investigate. He needed to reach Elder Gorick before they were intercepted. As expected, they hadn't gone far when slender figures dropped from the trees, surrounding them. 6 elves, taller and prouder than any house elf, their faces stern beneath crowns of woven starlight. "Halt," commanded the tallest, a female elf with silver hair and eyes like amber. "House elf, you breach our sanctuary and bring a human child. Explain yourself before we cast you both back." Dobby stood his ground though his knees knocked together. Dobby must speak with Elder Gorick. This is Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The one from the prophecy. A ripple of whispers passed through the guards. The leader narrowed her eyes. That prophecy is not for house elves to interpret. You've been among humans too long, slave elf. Their arrogance has infected you. Please, Dobby insisted, holding Harry a little higher. See his mark. Feel his magic. It's not like other wizards. The leader hesitated, then stepped forward. She peered at the lightning scar, then placed one slender finger against it. Immediately, a spark of gold and green shot between them. The elf guard gasped, jumping back. "Impossible," she whispered. Harry giggled, apparently delighted by the light show. The guard's expression changed, or replacing suspicion. "Bring them. Both of them. The council must see this." The elf city was unlike anything in the wizard or muggle world. Structures of living wood and crystal spiraled upward, connected by bridges of woven light. Everywhere, magic flowed freely, unbound by wands or incantations. Elves of all types, not just house elves but forest elves, mountain elves, and the regal high elves, stopped to stare as Dobby and Harry were escorted through the central plaza. A human child? Is that a house elf? What's happened to the barriers? The whispers followed them as they were led to the council tower, the tallest structure in the city. Inside, the space opened into a vast chamber where 13 elves sat in a semicircle on chairs carved from what looked like solid moonlight. At the center, Elder Gorick, ancient even by elf standards, his skin like parchment stretched over bone, his eyes deep pools of accumulated wisdom. Unlike the others, he didn't seem surprised. "So," he said, his voice surprisingly strong for one who looked so frail, "you have brought him at last." Dobby blinked in confusion. You were expecting Harry Potter?" "Not Harry Potter specifically," Elder Gorick said, rising from his seat with the aid of a staff carved with runes that shifted and changed as they watched. "But a child of power, a bridge between worlds, yes, we have been expecting such a one for many years." The other council members murmured among themselves, some nodding, others frowning in disapproval. "This is madness," Gorick, said one, a stern-faced elf with bark-like skin. "We cannot harbor a human child, much less one the wizards will be searching for. The Potter boy is famous, his disappearance will not go unnoticed." "The prophecy says nothing about a human child," argued another. "It speaks of a being of dual nature. This is clearly a wizard, not a bridge." Elder Gorick approached Dobby and Harry, studying the baby with intense focus. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms. Reluctantly, Dobby handed Harry over. The moment Elder Gorick held him, the runes on his staff glowed brighter, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with potential. "Look at his eyes," Elder Gorick said softly. "Look at his magic. It's not fully formed yet, but it's there. Different. Neither purely wizard nor purely, something else." He looked sharply at Dobby. "Tell us how you came to take him." Dobby explained everything, the Malfoys' conversation, the prophecy he'd remembered, finding Dumbledore leaving Harry on the doorstep, the letter, his decision. "The prophecy you recall," Elder Gorick said when Dobby finished, "is incomplete as passed down among house elves. The true verse speaks of a child marked by darkness who will walk between worlds, neither fully one nor the other, who will remember what wizards have forgotten and teach what elves have hidden." Harry chose that moment to reach for Elder Gorick's staff, tiny fingers grasping at the glowing runes. Where he touched, the light intensified, and several runes rearranged themselves. The council chamber went utterly silent. "The staff responds to him," someone whispered finally. "Impossible." Elder Gorick smiled, the expression transforming his ancient face. Not impossible. Merely unexpected in its timing. He turned back to the council. I move that we accept the child into Tir Na Nog, under the ancient rite of adoption. Adoption? The bark-skinned elf looked horrified. You can't mean to make a human child one of us. Not make him one of us, Elder Gorick corrected. Recognize that he already is, in some essential way. His magic is different, yes, but compatible. Harmonious. With the binding ritual, he could thrive here. And what of the wizards? Asked another council member. They will search for him. They may find us. The wizards have forgotten the true ways to Tir Na Nog, Elder Gorick said dismissively. They rely too much on their wands, their rigid spells. Our barriers will hold against their methods. The debate continued, growing heated at times. Dobby stood nervously, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. What if they rejected Harry? What if they punished Dobby by sending him back without his memories? What if, enough, Elder Gorick said finally, his voice cutting through the arguments. We will vote. Those in favor of accepting Harry Potter under the ancient rite, raise your hands. 7 hands rose, including Elder Gorick's. Those opposed? 6 hands. A moment of tense silence followed, broken by Harry's delighted gurgle as he managed to grab hold of Elder Gorick's beard. The council has spoken, Elder Gorick announced, seemingly unbothered by the baby's grip on his facial hair. Harry Potter will be welcomed into Tir Na Nog. The binding ritual will commence at moonrise. He handed Harry back to Dobby. House Elf, you have shown great courage today. By our laws, any who bring a valid candidate for the prophecy may claim sanctuary as well. Do you wish to stay as the boy's guardian? Dobby's eyes filled with tears. Dobby would be honored, sir. Dobby will care for Harry Potter with his life. Elder Gorick nodded. So be it. Take him to the preparation chambers. The ritual cannot wait, the longer he remains unbound to our realm, the harder it will be for him to adapt. As Dobby carried Harry away, following a young elf attendant, he heard the debate resume behind them. This is unprecedented, the wizards will never stop searching, if the prophecy is true, Dobby tuned it out, focusing instead on Harry's face. The baby was calm, curious, taking in the new surroundings with bright eyes that seemed to understand far more than any infant should. Don't worry, Harry Potter, Dobby whispered. You is safe now. You is home. The binding ritual took place in a grove at the center of the city, where the oldest and largest tree stretched its branches like protective arms over a pool of water so still it looked like liquid silver. 7 stones encircled the pool, each carved with runes similar to those on Elder Gorick's staff. Dobby watched nervously as Harry was prepared. The baby had been bathed in urban-fused water and dressed in a simple white gown embroidered with more runes. Around his neck hung a pendant of green stone that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The stone will help his human body adapt to the magic of our realm, explained the healer elf who performed the preparations. Without it, he might waste away, unable to process the ambient energy. A crowd had gathered to watch, nearly every elf in the city, it seemed. News had spread quickly about the human baby and the prophecy. Some looked curious, others worried, a few openly hostile. Elder Gorick arrived as the moon reached its zenith. He carried his staff and a small silver knife. The sight of the blade made Dobby step forward anxiously. Peace, guardian, Elder Gorick said, noticing Dobby's reaction. The blood required is minimal and freely given. The boy will feel no pain. The ritual began with Elder Gorick speaking in the ancient elf tongue, words Dobby only half understood. The pool began to glow, the light rising like mist above the surface. One by one, 7 elves, the 7 council members who had voted to accept Harry, stepped forward to stand on the stones around the pool. Each placed a drop of their blood into the water, which flashed a different color with each addition. Finally, Elder Gorick approached Harry, who lay on a cushion of moss near the pool's edge. With a gentle touch, he pricked the baby's finger and let a single drop of blood fall into the water. The pool flashed blindingly bright, then settled into a swirling pattern of gold and green, the same colors that had appeared when the guard had touched Harry's scar. "The realm accepts him," Elder Gorick announced. "Now for the naming." This was the part Dobby had been dreading. In elf tradition, a new name meant a new identity. Would Harry Potter cease to be Harry Potter? In the wizard world, he was Harry James Potter, Elder Gorick said, dipping his finger in the glowing water and tracing a symbol on Harry's forehead, directly over the lightning scar. "Here in Tir Na Nog, he shall be known as Harwin, child of two worlds, marked by fate." The name Harwin rippled through the crowd, whispered from elf to elf like a spell taking hold. "But," Elder Gorick continued, looking directly at Dobby, "to his guardian and in his heart, he may remain Harry Potter. Both names are true, as both worlds are his birthright." Relief flooded through Dobby. Harry could keep his identity, his connection to his parents. The ritual concluded with Elder Gorick lifting Harry and immersing him briefly in the pool. The water clung to the baby like a second skin, glowing brightly, then slowly absorbed into his body. The scar on his forehead glowed momentarily, then returned to its normal appearance. When Elder Gorick lifted Harry out, the baby didn't cry. Instead, he laughed, a bright, bubbling sound that echoed through the grove. Around them, flowers that had been closed for the night suddenly bloomed, releasing sweet scents into the air. The elves gasped collectively. "Spontaneous nature magic," someone whispered. "From a human child." "Not just a human child anymore," Elder Gorick corrected, handing Harry back to Dobby. "Harwin is now bound to Tir Na Nog, as Tir Na Nog is bound to him. His magic will grow differently than had he remained in the wizard world. Neither purely wizard nor purely elf, but something new." Dobby cradled Harry close, overwhelmed by the responsibility but fiercely determined to live up to it. "What happens now?" he asked. Elder Gorick smiled that transformative smile again. Now we raise a child of prophecy. And we prepare for the day when the worlds that have long been separated must once again acknowledge each other." Far away in Scotland, Albus Dumbledore was awakened by a piercing alarm. He sat bolt upright, instantly alert despite the late hour. The silver instruments on his desk were whirling, puffing, and in one case, emitting an ear-splitting whistle. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, waving his wand to silence the noise. The instruments continued their frantic movements silently, their behavior telling him something had gone catastrophically wrong with the protective wards he'd set. "Fawkes," he said to his phoenix, who was watching with bright, intelligent eyes. "Something's happened to Harry." In moments, Dumbledore had apparat to Privet Drive. The street was quiet, the houses dark. Nothing seemed amiss at first glance. Until he reached number 4. The blankets were there on the doorstep, exactly where he'd left them. The letter, too, was undisturbed. But the bundle was empty. Harry Potter was gone. Continue by opening the next chapter. Chapter 2, Caught Between Magic. The training hall echoed with the sharp crack of magical energy as Harry ducked under Elder Gorick's attack. 10 years in Tir Na Nog had turned the once helpless infant into a lanky 10-year-old with perpetually messy black hair and eyes that shifted between human green and elven gold depending on the magic he was wielding. "Too slow, Harwin," Gorick called, his ancient voice belying his surprisingly quick movements. The old elf spun his staff, sending 3 consecutive bolts of blue light shooting toward Harry from different angles. Harry didn't panic. He'd been training with Gorick since he could walk. With a fluid motion that combined human agility with elven grace, he dropped to the ground, rolled, and came up with both hands extended. No wand, elves didn't use them, and neither did he. "Scath!" Harry called, visualizing a shield of woven light. Magic surged from his core, down his arms, and blossomed outward in a hemisphere of glittering protection. The blue bolt struck it and dispersed harmlessly. Elder Gorick nodded approvingly but didn't let up. He raised his staff high, and the very air around them began to warp and twist. Reality bending, Harry muttered, recognizing the technique. No fair. Will your enemies fight fair, young one? Gorick challenged, as the floor beneath Harry suddenly tilted at an impossible angle. Harry stumbled but caught himself. This was advanced magic, even for an elf. Harry had only started learning the theory last month, and Gorick knew he couldn't counter it yet. Or could he? A flash of inspiration hit him. Harry couldn't bend reality himself yet, but maybe he could. Scathan, he shouted, modifying the shield spell with the elven word for mirror. His shield changed, its surface becoming reflective. The warped reality around him suddenly bounced back toward Gorick, not with the same power but enough to make the elder elf's beard lift in a magical breeze. Ha! Harry grinned triumphantly. How's that for improvisation? Gorick's serious expression cracked, a smile breaking through. Creative, Harwin. Very creative. A reflection isn't as powerful as the original casting, but it can certainly surprise an opponent who isn't expecting it. He tapped his staff twice on the ground, and the training hall returned to normal. Harry let his shield dissolve, shaking out his tingling hands. That spell had taken more out of him than he'd expected. You're improving rapidly, Gorick said, crossing the room to place a gnarled hand on Harry's shoulder. Your mother would be proud. Harry's heart gave a familiar twinge. Not his human mother, he'd never known Lily Potter except through Dobby's stories. Gorick meant Lyrienne, the elf who had given a drop of her blood in the binding ritual. She'd been like a mother to him until her passing 3 winters ago. Thanks, Harry said simply. He glanced at the crystal timekeeper on the wall. I should go. I promised Nippy I'd meet her at the North Grove. Ah, young Nippy, Gorick's eyes twinkled with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. Do give her my regards. Harry felt his cheeks warm. It's just training, Gorick. She's been helping me with concealment magic. Of course, the elder elf said, not even trying to hide his knowing smile. Off with you, then. Harry didn't need further prompting. He grabbed his pack from the bench against the wall and darted out of the training hall, through the twisting corridors of the living tree that housed the Elven Academy. Outside, Tir Na Nog was in full summer glory. The eternal trees stretched toward a sky that wasn't quite the same blue as the human worlds. Strands of magic drifted visibly through the air like luminous pollen, gathering in pools around the most magical locations. Elves of all types went about their daily business, crafting, teaching, tending to the living city. Many nodded respectfully as Harry passed. After 10 years, most had accepted him, though some of the older elves still regarded him with suspicion. He'd learned to ignore those looks. This was his home, whatever anyone thought. Harwin. Over here. Harry spotted Nippy perched on a lower branch of a copper-barked tree. She was small for an elf her age, closer to Dobby's size than the taller high elves, with skin the pale blue-green of a forest pool and hair like autumn leaves. Her most striking feature was her eyes, large even for an elf, with irises that shifted through all the colors of twilight. You're late, she declared as Harry approached. Gorick was teaching me reality bending, Harry explained, dropping his pack at the base of the tree. Nippy's eyes widened. Already? But you're only 10, yeah, I know, Harry grinned up at her. He wasn't teaching me to cast it. Just to recognize and maybe counter it. And did you? Sort of. Harry described his mirror shield solution. Nippy whistled, impressed. That's why you're his favorite, you know. You keep coming up with ways to bend the rules. I'm not his favorite, Harry protested automatically, though they both knew it was true. You gonna come down, or are we training in the trees today? In answer, Nippy vanished. Not with the loud crack of wizard apparition that Dobby had described, but with a subtle ripple of the air, like heat rising from sun-baked stone. Harry spun around, knowing her tricks. Nice try, but I can still sense your magic. Can you? Nippy's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the feeling of Nippy's magical signature. Every elf, and every wizard, according to Gorick, had a distinct magical fingerprint. Nippy's felt like cool forest shade with an undercurrent of mischief. He turned slowly, arms outstretched. "You're there." He pointed to a spot 3 feet to his left. Nothing happened. "Wrong," Nippy giggled, suddenly appearing directly behind him. Before he could react, she'd snatched his glasses off his face. "Too slow, wizard boy. Hey! Give those back." Harry lunged for her, but Nippy danced away, twirling his glasses on one finger. "Catch me if you can." What followed was a mad chase through the lower branches of the eternal trees, with Nippy staying frustratingly just out of reach. Though Harry could manage without his glasses in the elf realm, the binding ritual had improved his sight somewhat, things were still blurry at a distance. It made tracking Nippy's quick movements extra challenging. "No fair using concealment magic," Harry called as Nippy flickered in and out of visibility. "All's fair in magic and mischief," she sang back, darting around a trunk. Harry changed tactics. Instead of following, he cut across to intercept her, using a trick Dobby had taught him. He pushed his awareness into the living wood of the trees, letting his magic mingle with theirs to sense where Nippy would emerge. The moment she rounded the trunk, Harry was waiting. "Gotcha," he cried, grabbing her wrist. Surprised, Nippy lost her balance. They tumbled together onto a wide branch, Harry finally snatching his glasses back with a triumphant laugh. "How did you do that?" Nippy demanded, sitting up and brushing leaves from her hair. "You shouldn't be able to track me when I'm concealed." "Tree listening," Harry explained, replacing his glasses. "Dobby showed me. The trees see everything in their domain. If you know how to ask, they'll tell you." Nippy looked impressed despite herself. "That's high elf magic. Dobby shouldn't even know that, let alone be able to teach it to you." "Dobby knows a lot more than most people give him credit for," Harry said, a touch defensively. Though Dobby was respected as Harry's guardian, many elves still saw him as, just, a house elf, lower in their social hierarchy. I know, Nippy sighed. "I didn't mean it like that. It's just, sometimes I forget you're not just a wizard trying to be an elf. You're something different." Harry didn't know how to respond to that. His dual nature was something he thought about constantly, what it meant, where he belonged. Dobby and Gorick encouraged him to embrace both sides of his heritage, but it wasn't always easy when those sides seemed so contradictory. "Anyway," Nippy said, changing the subject, "I didn't just ask you here for training. I found something. Something cool." Her twilight eyes sparkled with excitement. "What kind of something?" Harry asked suspiciously. The last cool something Nippy had discovered turned out to be a nest of pixie-like creatures that had stolen their shoes and hidden them all over the forest. "A way out," she whispered. Harry stared at her. "Out? You mean, to the human world, yeah." Nippy nodded eagerly. "A gap in the barriers. Not a big one, but enough for us to slip through. Don't you want to see it? Just once." Harry's heart raced. The human world. He'd seen glimpses of it in the scrying pools, heard stories from Dobby and the few other elves who had experienced there. But he'd never been back since Dobby brought him to Tir Na Nog as a baby. "We're not supposed to cross the barriers," he said slowly. "It's forbidden without council approval." "Since when do you care about rules?" Nippy challenged. "Besides, we wouldn't be gone long. Just a quick look around. Don't you want to see where you came from?" That hit home. Despite his happy life in Tir Na Nog, Harry had always wondered about the world of his birth, the world his human parents had lived and died in. "Where's this gap?" he asked, decision made. Nippy's face lit up. "I knew you'd want to go. It's near the western boundary, where the barrier thins at sunset. If we hurry, we can make it before the sun touches the horizon. They scrambled down from the tree and set off through the forest, away from the elven city. Harry knew he should tell someone where they were going. Dobby would worry, but the thrill of adventure was too strong to resist. As they reached the western boundary of Tir Na Nog, the forest thinned out, the enormous eternal trees giving way to more ordinary woodland. The quality of light changed, too, becoming more golden, less infused with visible magic. There, Nippy pointed to a shimmer in the air between two ancient oak trees. That's the gap. It only appears at sunset. Harry approached cautiously. Up close, the gap looked like heat ripples in the air, but with occasional flashes of the world beyond, a normal forest, its colors somehow both duller and more vivid than those in Tir Na Nog. How did you find this? Harry asked, circling the phenomenon. I was practicing farseeing and noticed the barrier flickering, Nippy explained. I've been watching it for 3 days. It's stable, just small. Harry reached out a hand, then hesitated. What if we can't get back? We can, Nippy assured him. The gap works both ways. I tested it with a branch yesterday. That was good enough for Harry. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward into the shimmer. The transition felt like walking through a waterfall, a momentary resistance, then a rush of sensation as he passed through. The air on the other side tasted different, heavier, filled with scents both familiar and strange. Nippy appeared beside him a moment later, her eyes wide with excitement. We did it. They stood in a perfectly ordinary forest, no different from those Harry had seen in books and scrying pools. No visible magic floated in the air, no luminescence shimmered from the plants. It felt, muted somehow, yet simultaneously more intense to his physical senses. Where are we, do you think? Harry asked, turning in a circle to take it all in. Somewhere in what humans call Scotland, I think, Nippy replied. Not far from their magic school. Hogwarts. Harry had heard of it from Dobby, who had gleaned information during his years with the Malfoys. Must be. Feel that? Nippy pointed north. There's strong magic that way. Harry concentrated and felt it, a distant hum of power, structured and contained in a way elven magic never was. Should we go closer, he suggested, already moving in that direction. Definitely. Nippy grinned, falling into step beside him. They hadn't gone far when Harry spotted movement ahead, people walking through the trees. He grabbed Nippy and pulled her behind a large oak. Humans, he whispered unnecessarily. They peered around the trunk. A small group of children about Harry's age were gathering what looked like plants and mushrooms, supervised by a tall, stern-looking woman. Wizard children, Nippy whispered back, pointing to the wands some carried. Look at their robes. The children wore black robes with different colored trim, red, blue, yellow, and green. School uniforms, Harry realized, remembering descriptions from Dobby's stories. That must be Hogwarts, Harry said, a strange longing rising in his chest. In another life, he might have been one of them. They're so normal, Nippy sounded disappointed. I thought wizards would be more impressive. They're just kids, Harry pointed out. Like us. One of the children, a girl with bushy brown hair, had wandered closer to their hiding spot, intently examining a patch of mushrooms. These aren't the right ones, Professor Sprout, she called. The cap is too dark for illuminating toadstools. Good eye, Miss Granger, the supervisor called back. Those are false illuminators. Poisonous to the touch. The girl nodded seriously and moved on, but as she turned, her eyes swept past the oak, and landed directly on Harry. She froze. Harry froze. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then the girl frowned. Hello. Who's there? Harry panicked. He grabbed Nippy's hand and pulled her down into a crouch. She saw me, he hissed. Impossible, Nippy whispered back. I've got a concealment charm on both of us. Well, it didn't work on her. The girl was approaching cautiously, wand now drawn. I can see you hiding, she said. Are you students? You shouldn't be in the forest without supervision. Harry made a split-second decision. Standing up slowly, he stepped out from behind the tree, keeping Nippy behind him. We're not students, he said. The girl's eyes widened. She took in his strange clothes, a tunic and leggings made of materials not found in the human world, and his distinctive green eyes behind round glasses. Who are you, then? She demanded, though she sounded more curious than frightened. This is Hogwarts grounds. You shouldn't be here if you're not a student or staff. I'm just passing through, Harry said lamely. We didn't know this was school property. The girl's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Where did you come from? Hogsmeade is the other direction, and there's nothing else for miles. Harry scrambled for an explanation, but before he could speak, Nippy lost patience and stepped out beside him, dropping her concealment charm entirely. The girl gasped, stumbling backward. You're an elf, she exclaimed. But not like a house elf. Are you a wood elf? I've read they're extinct in Britain. I'm not extinct, I'm standing right here, Nippy said irritably. And I'm not a wood elf, whatever that is. The girl seemed torn between fear and academic curiosity. The books say wild elves retreated from wizarding territories centuries ago. No one's seen one in, Hermione. What are you doing over there? The professor had noticed the girl's absence and was heading their way. We need to go, Harry said urgently to Nippy. Wait. The girl, Hermione, stepped forward. Who are you? Please, I've never met a wild elf before, or... She glanced at Harry, whatever you are. I'm Harry, he said without thinking. And this is Nippy. And we really need to go now. Harry? Hermione repeated, her eyes suddenly focusing on his forehead where, beneath his unruly bangs, the lightning scar was just visible. Not. Harry Potter. A jolt of shock ran through him. No one in the human world should recognize him. He'd been gone for 10 years. Yet somehow, this girl had put it together instantly. Miss Granger. The professor was getting closer. Go. Nippy tugged at Harry's arm. Now. They turned and ran, ignoring Hermione's calls behind them. Harry's mind was racing. How had she known? What did it mean that wizards could still recognize him after all this time? They didn't stop running until they reached the barrier, which was now barely visible in the fading light. That was too close, Nippy panted as they slipped back through to Tir Na Nog. We should have been more careful. She recognized me, Harry said, still stunned. She knew my name. That's bad, Nippy said grimly. If they know who you are, they might come looking. But how? It's been 10 years. I don't know. Nippy looked troubled. We should tell Dobby. And probably Elder Gorick. Harry groaned. They were definitely in trouble now. We'll be grounded until we're 100. Worth it though, right? Nippy nudged him with a small grin. Despite his worry, Harry couldn't help smiling back. Yeah. Worth it. They were indeed in considerable trouble. Dobby was beside himself when they confessed where they'd been, his tennis ball eyes filled with tears of both relief and anger. Harry Potter could have been captured. Harry Potter could have been hurt. Dobby has protected Harry Potter for 10 years, and now Harry Potter risks everything for a peek at the wizard world. I'm sorry, Dobby, Harry said, genuinely contrite. He hated upsetting his guardian. I just wanted to see it once. Dobby understands the curiosity, the house elf said, his anger deflating. But the danger, Harry Potter. The wizard world never stopped looking for you. That caught Harry's attention. Never stopped. What do you mean? Dobby hesitated, then sighed. Dobby should have told Harry Potter sooner. The wizards search still. They believe Harry Potter was kidnapped. There are rewards for information. Hunters who look for signs of accidental magic that might lead to you. Bounty hunters? Nippy asked, horrified. For Harry. Some seek the reward, Dobby nodded. Others serve darker purposes. The followers of the Dark Lord would still wish Harry Potter harm. Harry sat heavily on a cushion, mind reeling. He'd known, in an abstract way, that his disappearance must have caused a stir. But he'd assumed that after 10 years, the wizard world would have moved on. That girl recognized me instantly, he told Dobby. Just from seeing my scar and hearing my first name. How is that possible? Dobby and Nippy exchanged a glance that Harry couldn't interpret. What? He demanded. What aren't you telling me? Harry Potter is famous, Dobby said reluctantly. More famous than Dobby ever properly explained. Harry Potter's defeat of the Dark Lord made Harry Potter a legend. Harry Potter's disappearance became the greatest mystery of the wizarding world. But I was a baby, Harry protested. I don't even remember what happened with Voldemort. And I've been gone for a decade. Legends grow with time, came a new voice from the doorway. Elder Gorick stood there, leaning on his staff, his ancient eyes unreadable. And mysteries only sharpen with the passing of years. Harry swallowed hard. Are we in trouble with the council? Oh yes, Gorick said, but there was a hint of amusement beneath the severity. Quite a lot of trouble. But that can wait. First, we must address the more immediate concern. You were seen, identified. The boundary was breached. These are serious matters. It was my fault, Nippy said immediately. I found the gap. I convinced Harry to go. And I chose to follow, Harry added firmly, not letting her take all the blame. The responsibility is shared, Gorick agreed. But intentions matter less than consequences now. Come, both of you. The council is gathering. The council chamber was in an uproar when they arrived. News traveled fast in Tir na Nog, and the elves were in a state of barely contained panic at the thought of their sanctuary being discovered. The barriers must be strengthened immediately. The human child has compromised us, just as we feared. What if the wizards track them back to Tir na Nog? Elder Gorick tapped his staff sharply on the floor, bringing silence. Yes, there has been a breach. Yes, Harwin and Nifredil were seen by a young witch. But we need not overreact. Overreact? The bark-skinned elf who had opposed Harry's adoption 10 years ago stood up. A wizard child saw them and recognized the Potter boy. The entire wizarding world will know within days. Perhaps, Gorick acknowledged. Or perhaps not. Children are not always believed, especially when they speak of encountering legendary figures and extinct magical beings. We can't take that chance, another council member argued. The sanctuary has remained hidden for centuries because we've been careful. This breach threatens everything. Then what do you suggest? Gorick asked calmly. Shall we move the entire kingdom? Abandon Tir na Nog because one young witch caught a glimpse of 2 children. The council fell silent, considering. The gap in the barrier must be sealed, someone said finally. Of course, Gorick agreed. That will be done immediately. And the children must be punished, added the bark-skinned elf, Arbor. Especially the Potter boy. He has proven the risk of harboring a human child. Harry stood straight, facing the accusation. I accept whatever punishment the council decides, he said firmly. But I want to say something first. Elder Gorick nodded for him to continue. I'm sorry for breaking the rules and for the trouble I've caused, Harry began. But I don't regret seeing the human world, even briefly. It's part of who I am, just as Tir na Nog is. I've lived here for 10 years, and I've tried to honor both sides of my heritage. I don't think that's wrong. Murmurs ran through the council, some approving, others critical. The boy speaks well, someone commented. Pretty words don't change the danger, Arbor countered. No, Gorick agreed, but they remind us of the prophecy that brought him here. A child marked by darkness who will walk between worlds. Perhaps today was the first step on that path. Or the first step toward our discovery and destruction, Arbor said darkly. The debate continued, growing heated at times. Harry and Nippy stood silently, waiting for their fate to be decided. Finally, Gorick raised his hand for silence. The council has reached a decision. The children will be confined to the city for one full turning of the seasons. They will assist in the daily strengthening of the barriers as part of their education. And, he fixed Harry with a stern look, Harwin will begin intensive training in methods to shield his magical signature from detection. It was a fair punishment, Harry thought with relief. Harsh enough to make the point, but not excessive. There is more, Gorick continued. Given recent events, Harwin should know the full truth of his human heritage and the ongoing situation in the wizard world. It is time for him to understand exactly who and what he is, in both worlds. That, Harry hadn't expected. He glanced at Dobby, who looked both worried and relieved. Dobby will tell Harry Potter everything, his guardian promised. No more secrets. That night, in the living tree house they shared near the center of the city, Dobby told Harry the full story. Not just the bare facts he'd known before, that his parents were murdered by a dark wizard, that he somehow survived, but everything. The prophecy that had marked him before birth. The details of how Voldemort had killed his parents and tried to kill him. How the curse had rebounded, apparently destroying the Dark Lord. How Harry had become the boy who lived, a symbol of hope to the wizarding world. And how his disappearance had left that same world in a state of perpetual search and speculation. Some believe Harry Potter was taken by remaining Death Eaters, the Dark Lord's followers, Dobby explained. Others think Harry Potter was hidden by Dumbledore himself for protection. There are even those who believe Harry Potter died that night and the story of his survival was a lie. But this Dumbledore knows I survived, Harry said, trying to process it all. He left me on that doorstep. Yes. Albus Dumbledore has never stopped searching, Dobby confirmed. He leads the effort to find Harry Potter. And the Dursleys? The relatives I was supposed to go to. Dobby hesitated. They were not good people, Harry Potter. They hate magic. They would have treated Harry Potter badly. So you saved me from them, Harry said softly. Dobby hopes so, the house elf said, his large eyes sincere. Dobby never regretted taking Harry Potter, not for one day. Harry hugged his guardian fiercely. I never regretted it either, Dobby. Never. That night, Harry lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling of his room. His mind was full of new information, trying to reconcile the life he knew with the fate he'd avoided and the legend he'd apparently become without knowing it. He was famous, not for anything he'd done consciously, but for surviving. People had been looking for him for a decade. Some wanted to protect him, others to harm him. And all because of something that happened when he was a baby, something he couldn't even remember. It was overwhelming. Yet strangely, it also brought clarity. For years, he'd felt caught between worlds, not fully elf, not fully wizard. Now he understood that even in the wizard world, he would have been set apart, marked as different. At least here in Tir Na Nog, he had Dobby, Nippy, and Elder Gorick. He had a home, a family of sorts. Whatever lay ahead, and Harry had a growing feeling that his brief venture into the human world had set larger events in motion, he wouldn't face it alone. In the days that followed, life settled back into a routine, albeit with new restrictions and increased training. Harry learned methods to mask his magical signature, to shield his thoughts, to move between worlds with minimal disruption to the barriers. The goal is not just concealment, Elder Gorick explained during one particularly intense session, but harmonization. Your magic must learn to adapt to each environment, to become part of the ambient energy rather than standing out against it. It was exhausting work, requiring a level of concentration and control Harry had never needed before. But he was motivated by the knowledge that his unshielded magic might lead enemies, or even well-meaning searchers, straight to Tir Na Nog. Nippy trained alongside him, partly as punishment for her role in the boundary breach, but mostly out of solidarity. Though her pure elven magic was naturally more attuned to Tir Na Nog, she too needed to learn how to move undetected in the human world. "Not that I'm planning any more unauthorized trips," she assured Gorick, who merely raised a skeptical eyebrow in response. A month after the incident, Harry was practicing a particularly difficult shielding technique in the training hall when Dobby appeared, looking agitated. "Harry Potter must come quickly," the house elf said, twisting his hands anxiously. "The council has called an emergency meeting." "About what?" Harry asked, letting the shield dissolve. Dobby is not sure. "But it concerns the human world and disturbances." The council chamber was already full when they arrived. Elves of all ranks and types crowded the space, their faces grave. Elder Gorick stood at the center, his staff planted firmly before him. "Ah, Harwin," he said as Harry entered. "Good. You should hear this." "What's happening?" Harry asked, taking his place beside Dobby. "We have received disturbing reports from our observers," Gorick explained. "The gap you and Nifredil discovered was not a natural thinning of the barriers, as we first believed. It was created, deliberately, from the outside." A chill ran down Harry's spine. "Created by who?" "That remains unclear. But there have been similar attempts at other boundary points. Someone, or something, is trying to find a way into Tir Na Nog." Murmurs of fear spread through the chamber. The sanctuary had been secure for centuries. The idea that someone was actively trying to breach it was terrifying. "Is it because of me?" Harry asked, the guilt immediate and crushing. "Because that girl recognized me?" "We don't believe so," Gorick said, though Harry noticed he didn't sound entirely convinced. "The attempts began before your venture beyond the borders. But your encounter may have intensified the efforts." "There's more," said another council member, a willowy elf named Lysandra. "The wizard community is in turmoil. There are reports of a resurgence of dark magic. Old alliances being reformed. And increased rewards for information about Harry Potter." "What does it mean?" someone asked. "It means," Gorick said gravely, "that events long foretold are beginning to unfold. The peace we have enjoyed is coming to an end. Change is upon us, whether we welcome it or not." Harry felt all eyes in the chamber turn to him. The prophecy that had brought him to Tir Na Nog hung in the air unspoken. "A child marked by darkness who will walk between worlds, neither fully one nor the other, who will remember what wizards have forgotten and teach what elves have hidden." "What do we do?" Harry asked quietly. "We prepare," Gorick answered. "We strengthen our defenses. And you, Harwin, must accelerate your training. If you are indeed the child of prophecy, you must be ready for what lies ahead." The pace of Harry's training increased dramatically after that. He spent hours daily with Elder Gorick, learning advanced elven magic that was typically reserved for elves centuries older than himself. Dobby taught him what he knew of wizard spells and movements, cobbled together from years of observation in the Malfoy household. Other elves contributed specialized knowledge, healing, combat, stealth, and more. Through it all, Nippy remained his constant companion and fiercest competitor. While Harry had raw power that sometimes left her in awe, Nippy had the innate magical control that came from being born to the elven traditions. They pushed each other, challenged each other, and grew stronger together. 3 months after the council meeting, they were practicing near the eastern border of Tir Na Nog, far from where they'd found the gap but still within the city's protective sphere. Harry was trying to master a particularly difficult form of elven transportation, not apparition as wizards knew it, but a flowing movement through the natural magical currents of the world. "You're forcing it again," Nippy critiqued as Harry reappeared 10 feet from his target, looking frustrated. "You need to let the current carry you, not fight against it." Easy for you to say, Harry grumbled, pushing his glasses up his sweaty nose. You've been doing this since you could walk. And you've been doing things I can't since you were 7, she countered. Remember the fire calling? Harry grinned despite himself. His accidental magic had manifested early and dramatically in Tir Na Nog, sometimes in ways that alarmed even the elders. The fire-calling incident had been particularly memorable. He'd somehow summoned every flame in the city to dance around him in a moment of childish joy. Fair point, he conceded. Let me try again. He closed his eyes, feeling for the magical currents that flowed through Tir Na Nog like invisible rivers. There, a strong one, moving roughly in the direction he wanted to go. Instead of forcing his way through space as wizard apparition did, he needed to surrender to the current, becoming part of it briefly before re-emerging. Harry took a deep breath and stepped forward, letting his physical form dissolve partially into the magical flow. It was a strange sensation, like being everywhere and nowhere at once. He could sense the entire pathway of the current, from the heart of Tir Na Nog all the way to the... Harry's consciousness jerked to a halt. There was something wrong with the current. Where it should have flowed smoothly to the boundary and then curved back into the kingdom, it instead pushed outward, thinning the barrier. And on the other side, something was pulling. Harry wrenched himself out of the current, materializing beside Nippy with a gasp. What happened? She demanded, steadying him as he swayed. You went pale all of a sudden. The barrier, Harry panted. It's happening again. Something's trying to break through. Right now. Nippy's eyes widened. We need to alert the council. No time, Harry said, already moving toward the disturbance he'd sensed. It's close. We need to see what it is. Harry, no. Nippy grabbed his arm. Remember what happened last time? We can't just, last time we were curious kids looking for adventure, Harry cut her off. This time something is actively threatening Tir Na Nog. We need to know what we're dealing with. Nippy hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But we look only. At the first sign of danger, we go for help. They moved quickly through the forest, Harry following the disturbed magical current. As they got closer, they could see the barrier visibly thinning, like fabric stretched to transparency. There. Nippy pointed to a flicker of movement on the other side. Harry squinted. Through the thinning barrier, he could make out figures moving in the human world, 3 adults in dark robes, wands extended toward the barrier. They were chanting something, a spell Harry couldn't hear but could feel resonating against the magical membrane separating the worlds. Wizards, he whispered. They're trying to break through. How did they find this spot? Nippy wondered. The barriers are supposed to be undetectable. Harry had a sinking feeling. My magical signature. When we went through before, they must have detected the residual energy and tracked it here. The barrier pulsed, weakening further. One of the wizards, a tall man with long, white blonde hair, stepped forward, pressing his wand directly against the thinning spot. We know you're there, Potter, the man called, his voice distorted but audible through the barrier. We can sense your magic. Come out, and we won't have to come in. Harry instinctively drew back, though logic told him the wizard couldn't actually see them yet. They know it's you, Nippy hissed. We need to go. Now. Wait, Harry held up a hand. I need to know who they are, what they want. What they want is you. Nippy tugged at his arm. This isn't a game, Harry. The blonde wizard was still talking, his voice becoming clearer as the barrier weakened further. The Dark Lord's followers seek closure, Potter. 10 years you've hidden. 10 years we've searched. It ends today. Harry felt a chill run through him. Death Eaters. The followers of Voldemort, the ones who had wanted him dead as a baby, who apparently still wanted him dead now. We have to warn everyone, Harry said, backing away from the barrier. If they break through, a sharp crack interrupted him as the barrier split, a small tear appearing where the wizard's wand pressed against it. It wasn't large enough for a person to pass through, but it was growing. "Run!" Nippy shouted, pushing Harry ahead of her. Back to the city. They sprinted through the forest, Harry's mind racing. The elves had protocols for barrier breaches, magical defenses that would activate, council members who would respond. But it would take time for word to spread, for the defenses to mobilize. "We need to slow them down," Harry said, skidding to a halt. "Give the council time to respond." "How?" Nippy demanded. "There are 3 of them, and they're fully trained wizards." Harry thought quickly. The confusion snare. "If we can set it up across their path, that might work," Nippy agreed, catching on immediately. "But we'd have to get close to the breach point." "I'll do it," Harry decided. "You go warn the council." "No way," Nippy said firmly. "We do it together or not at all." There was no time to argue. They doubled back, moving more cautiously now, staying hidden among the trees. The breach was wider, nearly large enough for a person to squeeze through. The blonde wizard was directing the other 2 as they worked to enlarge it. "Careful, Crab," he was saying. "The edges are unstable. One wrong move and the backlash could kill you." "Why not just blast it open, Lucius?" one of the others asked. "Because, you fool, we want to capture Potter, not alert the entire hidden realm to our presence." "Subtlety, Goyle. Always subtlety." Harry's blood ran cold at the name. Lucius. This had to be Lucius Malfoy, Dobby's former master. The wizard who had indirectly set all of this in motion by discussing Harry's fate that night 10 years ago. "The snare needs to be there," Nippy whispered, pointing to a spot between the breach and the nearest cover the wizards would likely head for. "They'll come through and head straight for those rocks." Harry nodded. Together, they began to weave the spell, a complex elven magic that affected perception and movement. It wasn't offensive in the traditional sense, it wouldn't hurt the wizards. But it would confuse them, make them lose track of direction and purpose, hopefully long enough for help to arrive. They had just finished setting the snare when the breach widened enough for a person to pass through. Lucius Malfoy stepped back, gesturing to his companions. "You first, Crab. Then Goyle. I'll follow once you confirm it's safe." The bulkier wizard squeezed through the opening, wand at the ready. His eyes darted around the elven forest, widening at the visible magic in the air and the unnatural colors of the vegetation. "It's weird in here, Lucius," he called back. "Like nothing I've ever seen." "Of course it is, you simpleton. It's the hidden elf kingdom. Centuries of pure magic, undiluted by human influence. Now keep moving. Look for the boy." The second wizard followed, and finally Malfoy himself stepped through, moving with the confidence of someone who believed himself superior to his surroundings. "Potter," he called. "We know you're here. Show yourself and spare your friends the consequences of harboring you." Harry and Nippy remained hidden, watching as the 3 wizards moved forward, directly toward their snare. "Remember," Lucius was saying, "we need him alive. The Dark Lord's remaining followers will want the honor of," he broke off as they crossed into the snare's influence. The effect was immediate. All 3 wizards stopped, looking around in confusion. Where were we going?" Goyle asked, turning in a complete circle. "The boy," Lucius said, but he sounded uncertain. "We were looking for something important." "I can't remember," Crabbe admitted, lowering his wand. "Which way is back?" The wizards began wandering in random directions, their movements uncoordinated, their purpose forgotten. The snare was working perfectly. "Now's our chance," Nippy whispered. "Let's go while they're confused." They began to edge away, but at that moment, a branch snapped under Harry's foot. The sound, amplified by the tense silence, caught Malfoy's attention. Despite the snare, the wizard's head snapped toward them, his eyes suddenly focusing. "There," he shouted, raising his wand. Stupefy. A jet of red light shot toward them. Harry pushed Nippy out of the way and raised his hands, calling forth the shield spell he practiced countless times with Elder Gorick. Scath. The magical bolt struck his shield and dissipated. Malfoy's eyes widened. Wandless magic, he breathed. So it is you, Potter. The other wizards were regaining their focus, fighting through the snare's influence. They raised their wands, flanking Malfoy. Run! Harry shouted to Nippy. Get help. Not without you, she insisted, moving to his side. How touching, Malfoy sneered. The famous Harry Potter, found at last, playing with elves in a mythical realm. The prophet will have a field day with this story. After we bring you back, of course. I'm not going anywhere with you, Harry said firmly, maintaining his shield while trying to think of a way out. He couldn't fight 3 adult wizards, but he couldn't let them take him either. You don't have a choice, boy, Malfoy said, advancing slowly. You've evaded us for 10 years. The Dark Lord's remaining followers have waited long enough for vengeance. Voldemort is gone, Harry said, the name feeling strange on his tongue. He's been gone for a decade. Malfoy's face contorted with anger. Do not speak his name. You, a half-blood infant, somehow defeated the greatest dark wizard of all time. His loyal servants deserve answers. And retribution. As he spoke, Malfoy raised his wand again, this time aiming at Nippy. Perhaps you need motivation to cooperate. Crucio. The unforgivable curse shot toward Nippy. Without thinking, Harry threw himself in front of her, taking the full force of the curse. Pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced tore through him. Every nerve ending felt like it was on fire. Harry fell to his knees, a scream ripping from his throat. Harry! Nippy cried, dropping beside him. Through the haze of agony, Harry saw Malfoy approach, a cruel smile on his face. Interesting, the wizard observed. Self-sacrifice. How very Gryffindor of you, Potter. Your parents would be proud. Before they died screaming, that is. The taunt about his parents triggered something in Harry, a surge of both rage and power. The binding ritual that had made him part of Tir Na Nog had given him access to the ambient magic of the realm, and now he drew on it instinctively. The pain of the Cruciatus curse was still there, but Harry pushed through it, forcing himself to focus. Elder Gorick had taught him that intent was the purest form of magic, more fundamental than spells or wands. Harry focused his intent, not on a specific spell, but on a simple command, repel. The ambient magic of Tir Na Nog responded, surging through Harry and exploding outward in a wave of pure force. Malfoy and his companions were thrown backward, slamming into trees with bone-jarring impact. The Cruciatus curse broke, leaving Harry gasping but free of pain. He struggled to his feet, helped by Nippy. What was that? She asked, wide-eyed. I don't know, Harry admitted. It just happened. The wizards were recovering, looking dazed but angry. Malfoy was the first to regain his footing, his face now a mask of fury. You'll pay for that, Potter, he snarled, raising his wand again. Avada, he never finished the curse. A blast of silver light struck him from behind, freezing him in place. Similar bolts hit his companions. Harry turned to see Elder Gorick approaching, flanked by a dozen elf guards. The elder's staff glowed with power, his ancient face set in lines of cold fury. You dare, Gorick said, his voice carrying despite its softness, to enter our realm uninvited. To attack our children. To attempt an unforgivable on sacred ground. Elder Gorick, Harry gasped in relief. They're Death Eaters. Followers of Voldemort. We know what they are, Gorick said grimly. The question is what to do with them now. The elf guards surrounded the paralyzed wizards. One of them, the silver-haired female who had first encountered Harry and Dobby 10 years ago, approached Gorick. The breach is sealed, Elder. But there may be others waiting on the outside. These three did not act alone. Then we must ensure they cannot lead more of their kind to us, Gorick decided. He turned to Harry and Nippy. Are you hurt? I'm fine, Harry said, though his limbs still trembled from the aftereffects of the cruciatus. They were after me. They've been looking for 10 years. And they found you because of your expedition beyond the barriers, Gorick noted, though without accusation. Your magical signature is distinctive, Harwin. It calls to those who seek you, for good or ill. What will happen to them? Nippy asked, eyeing the frozen wizards warily. They cannot be allowed to remember Tir Na Nog, Gorick said. Nor can they be permitted to recall finding Harry Potter. Their memories must be modified before they are returned to their world. You can do that? Harry asked, surprised. He knew elves had powerful magic, but manipulating human memories seemed beyond what he'd seen before. It is an ancient art, rarely used, Gorick explained. But necessary in this case. The elf guards were already moving the paralyzed wizards back toward the sealed breach, which now looked like nothing more than a shimmer in the air. Come, Gorick said, placing a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. You have shown great courage today, both of you. But we have much to discuss. The barrier was breached once, it can be breached again. And now we know for certain that dark forces still seek the boy who lived. As they walked back toward the city, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The protective cocoon of Tir Na Nog had been pierced. The outside world, his original world, had found a way in. And sooner or later, he would have to find a way to face it. The prophecy, he said quietly to Elder Gorick as they walked. It's really happening, isn't it? I'm going to have to leave Tir Na Nog eventually. The ancient elf looked at him with eyes full of both sadness and pride. Yes, Harwin. I believe you will. But not alone, and not unprepared. Harry glanced at Nippy, who walked on his other side, her twilight eyes determined. No, he agreed. Not alone. As they reached the outskirts of the elf city, Harry looked back one last time at the now invisible breach point. For 10 years, he'd been hidden, protected, raised in a world of wonder and magic unlike anything most wizards could imagine. But the human world, with all its dangers and complexities, was calling him back. Harry knew that soon, he would have to answer. Chapter 3, Letters and Legacies. Harry ducked as another owl swooped over his head, this one somehow managing to penetrate the eastern boundary where the others had failed. 3 more circled above the treetops, their eyes unervingly focused, each clutching identical envelopes. That's the 7th one today. Nippy yelped, snatching the letter from the ground where it fell. How are they getting through? Harry examined the heavy parchment envelope with the now familiar wax seal, an ornate H surrounded by 4 animals. Magic finds a way, I guess. Especially when it's this determined. 6 months had passed since the Death Eater incident at the barrier. 6 months of intensified training, strengthened defenses, and growing tension in Tir Na Nog. But nothing had prepared them for this latest invasion, the seemingly unstoppable delivery of Harry's Hogwarts acceptance letter. These wizard birds are stupidly persistent, Nippy grumbled, turning the envelope over in her hands. Same letter as all the others? Harry nodded. They'd opened the first one that had somehow breached the barriers 3 days ago, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeed, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. What I don't understand, Harry said, watching the circling owls with a mixture of wariness and fascination, is how they know I'm alive, let alone where to find me. Tir Na Nog isn't supposed to be on any map. It's not, came Elder Gorik's voice as he approached through the trees, his staff tapping rhythmically against the forest floor. But magic recognizes magic, especially magic meant for a specific person. These letters are bound to you, Harwin. They seek you like water flowing downhill, finding every crack, every seam in our defenses. Harry frowned, absently touching the lightning scar on his forehead. So no matter how strong the barriers get, the letters will keep coming, Gorik confirmed. And worse, each penetration creates a trace, a magical trail that could potentially be followed. By Dumbledore, Harry said. It wasn't a question. Indeed. The wizard who left you with those muggles is not one to give up easily, especially on something he considers his responsibility. Gorik took the letter from Nippy's hands, examining it with ancient eyes that missed nothing. The council is meeting to discuss the situation. Your presence is requested. Harry and Nippy exchanged glances. Council meetings had become more frequent in recent months, but Harry was rarely asked to attend. That doesn't sound good, Nippy murmured as they followed Gorik toward the city. No kidding, Harry whispered back. Last time I was requested, I ended up having to recite the entire history of elven-human relations in front of everyone. Well, you did mix up the Treaty of Silver Streams with the Concord of Whispered Oaths. They happened within 10 years of each other. And they both involved wand restrictions. Their banter died as they entered the council chamber. Unlike previous meetings with their formal arrangement and orderly process, this one resembled barely controlled chaos. Elves argued in small groups, voices raised. Maps and magical projections flickered in the air. And at the center of it all, on a simple pedestal, sat a small pile of opened Hogwarts letters. Ah, Harwin, said one of the council members, a normally cheerful elf named Lyrian whose face now wore an expression of deep concern. Perhaps you can help us understand these persistent communications. I'll try, Harry said, approaching the pedestal. But I only know what was in the first one. It's just a school acceptance letter. Not quite just, young one, said Arbor, the bark-skinned elf who had opposed Harry's adoption. Though still not entirely friendly, his attitude toward Harry had softened somewhat since the Death Eater incident. These letters carry complex magic, locator spells, identity verification charms, and something else we cannot quite identify. Compulsion, Dobby's voice came from the entrance where the house elf had just arrived, looking agitated. Dobby recognizes it. The letters contain mild compulsion magic to ensure human children respond. To make them want to attend the wizard school. The council members exchanged alarmed glances. Is that affecting Harry? Nippy asked, concerned. Impossible to say, Gorik replied. The binding ritual altered Harwin's magical resonance. He may be resistant to such influences, or he may be more susceptible. Harry considered this. Did he feel compelled to respond to the letters? He wasn't sure. He'd definitely been curious about Hogwarts since first hearing about it from Dobby years ago. The idea of seeing the wizarding world, of learning more about his birth parents and his human heritage, those thoughts had occupied his mind more frequently since the letters began arriving. But was that natural curiosity or magical compulsion? I don't think it's affecting me, he said slowly. At least, not in an obvious way. I'm interested in the letters, but I don't feel like I have to respond. Nevertheless, Gorik said, the situation is concerning. Each letter that finds you creates a stronger connection, a clearer path. It is only a matter of time before wizards follow that path to our doorstep. Like Malfoy did, Harry said grimly. Potentially worse, Arbor interjected. The Death Eaters found a weak point in the barrier and forced their way through. Limited, crude. But these letters are creating a network of connections, like a spider's web across our defenses. If Dumbledore follows those connections, he could find us, Harry finished. All of us. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The implications were clear, the sanctuary of Tir Na Nog, hidden for centuries, was at risk of exposure. There is another concern, Gorik said finally. Harwin is approaching a critical age for his magical development. His power grows daily, becoming more difficult to contain and control. Without proper training specific to his wizard heritage, that power could become unstable. But he's getting the best training in Tir Na Nog. Nippy protested. Harry's stronger than any elf his age. In elven magic, yes, Gorick acknowledged. But his core is still partly human, partly wizard. That aspect of his power needs guidance too, guidance we cannot fully provide. Harry felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He knew where this was heading. You want me to go to Hogwarts, he said quietly. It wasn't a question, but Gorick answered anyway. The council is divided on the matter. Some believe it would be safer for all if you responded to the letters and attended the wizard school. Others fear it would mean losing you to the human world forever. What do you think? Harry asked, looking directly at the elder elf who had been his teacher and mentor for a decade. Gorick's ancient eyes held a depth of wisdom and sadness that made Harry's chest tighten. I believe, young Harwin, that the prophecy that brought you to us always intended for you to walk in both worlds. The question is not whether you will go, but when and how, and what connections you will maintain between your two homes. Before Harry could respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the council chamber. An elf scout burst in, breathing hard. Elder Gorick. Council members. We've detected a breach, a major one. At the northern boundary. The chamber exploded into activity. Guards reached for weapons. Council members rose to their feet, calling for details. What kind of breach? Gorick demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. A wizard, the scout reported. Powerful. Unlike anything we've seen before. He didn't force his way through like the Death Eaters. He just appeared, as if the barriers recognized him. A chill ran down Harry's spine. He knew, somehow, who it was before the scout continued. He's asking for Harry Potter by name. He says he's Albus Dumbledore. The journey to the northern boundary took place in tense silence. Harry walked between Dobby and Elder Gorick, with Nippy slightly behind and a dozen elite elf guards surrounding them. No one spoke, but Harry could feel their anxiety, and his own, crackling in the air like static. What will you say to him? Nippy whispered finally, unable to bear the silence any longer. I don't know, Harry admitted. I've spent 10 years hearing about Albus Dumbledore from every angle. The great wizard who fought Voldemort. The manipulator who left me on a doorstep in November. The persistent searcher who never gave up looking. I don't know which version I'm about to meet. Remember who you are, Gorick said, his voice steady despite the tension. You are Harwin of Tir Na Nog and Harry Potter of the wizarding world. Both are true. Both give you strength. Speak from that dual heritage, and you will find the right words. As they approached the northern boundary, Harry felt a prickle of unfamiliar magic, powerful but controlled, ancient yet vibrant. It was nothing like the dark, grasping energy of the Death Eaters who had breached the eastern border. This magic felt like scholarship and wisdom, tempered with something that might be regret. Then they cleared the final stand of trees, and Harry saw him for the first time. Albus Dumbledore stood calmly at the very edge of Tir Na Nog, not quite inside the realm but not fully outside it either, existing somehow in the in-between space of the barrier itself. He was tall and thin, with flowing silver hair and beard that reminded Harry of starlight. Half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose, and behind them, bright blue eyes surveyed the approaching group with keen intelligence. The wizard wore robes of deep purple embroidered with silver stars that shifted position as he moved. But most striking was the aura of power that surrounded him, visible even to Harry's untrained eyes as a subtle shimmer in the air. Dumbledore's gaze found Harry immediately, unerringly, despite the group surrounding him. Those blue eyes widened slightly, and something like wonder crossed the ancient wizard's face. Harry Potter, Dumbledore said softly, his voice carrying despite its gentleness. At last. Harry felt Dobby tense beside him, the house elf moving slightly forward as if to shield his charge. Elder Gorick placed a restraining hand on Dobby's shoulder before stepping ahead of the group. "Albus Dumbledore," Gorick acknowledged, his voice formal. "You stand at the threshold of Tir Na Nog, realm of the free elves. You have not been invited." "And yet the barriers admitted me," Dumbledore replied pleasantly, as if they were discussing the weather. "Fascinating magic, these ancient protections. They seem to recognize intent rather than identity. Most illuminating." Gorick's expression remained impassive. "Your letters have harassed our realm for days. Your presence now confirms our fears, you tracked them here." "Indeed," Dumbledore inclined his head slightly. "Though I must confess, finding this place has been the work of many years, not merely days. The letters merely provided the final thread to follow." His gaze returned to Harry, who fought the urge to step back under that penetrating blue stare. "You have grown well, Harry. Your parents would be proud." Something in Harry's chest tightened at the mention of his birth parents. He stepped forward, ignoring Dobby's worried squeak. "You left me on a doorstep," Harry said, the words coming out before he could consider them. "In November. With people who hated magic." If Dumbledore was surprised by this direct accusation, he didn't show it. Instead, a flash of what looked genuinely like regret crossed his features. "So I did," he acknowledged. "A decision I have questioned many times in the decades since your alternative placement became apparent." "Alternative placement?" Nippy muttered behind Harry. "Is that what he calls kidnapping?" Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as they shifted to Nippy. "Not kidnapping, young elf, if the intention was protection rather than harm. Which I suspect it was." His gaze moved to Dobby, who straightened under the scrutiny. Dobby did what was right for Harry Potter, the house elf said firmly, his usual nervousness replaced by conviction. Dobby heard the Malfoys speaking of the boy being left with muggles who would mistreat him. Dobby remembered the ancient prophecy. Dobby acted to protect Harry Potter. "And so you brought him here," Dumbledore mused. "To Tir Na Nog, a realm many wizards consider merely legend. Most resourceful of you. Why are you here now?" Harry asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. "After 10 years. I have been searching for you since the night you disappeared, Harry," Dumbledore said simply. "Every magical means at my disposal, every connection, every favor owed, all have been employed in the effort to find you. As to why I have come personally once your location was confirmed." He spread his hands in a gesture that encompassed the entire elven realm. "I wish to see for myself that you were safe and well. And to deliver your Hogwarts letter in person, since our owls seem to have had limited success." "I got the letters," Harry said. "All of them." "Ah. Then perhaps what I am really here for is your answer," Dumbledore smiled gently. "Will you be joining us at Hogwarts this September, Harry?" Before Harry could respond, Elder Gorick tapped his staff firmly on the ground, sending a ripple of magic through the air. "This discussion should not take place at a border crossing," the elder elf declared. "Albus Dumbledore, the Council of Tir Na Nog will grant you temporary entry to our realm, under oath and escort, to discuss this matter properly. Do you accept these terms?" Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly, the first genuine surprise he had shown. "I would be honored," he said, bowing his head. "The hospitality of the elven realm is legendary, though few have experienced it in living memory." Gorick raised his staff, tracing glowing symbols in the air. "Speak these words, wizard. I, Albus Dumbledore, seek peaceful entry to Tir Na Nog. I will respect its laws, harm none of its inhabitants, and depart when my welcome is concluded." Dumbledore repeated the oath without hesitation, his own magic visibly intertwining with Gorick's as he spoke. When the last word was uttered, the barrier between them shimmered and parted like a curtain, allowing the wizard to step fully into Tir Na Nog. The moment Dumbledore entered the realm, Harry felt a shift in the magical atmosphere, like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples outward. The wizard paused, looking around with undisguised wonder as he took in the living magic of the elven kingdom. Extraordinary, he breathed. Simply extraordinary. The ambient magic here is unlike anything in the wizarding world. We do not bind our magic in wands or limit it with rigid incantations, Gorick explained, a hint of pride in his voice despite the tense circumstances. Here, magic flows freely, to be shaped by will and intent. And this is the world in which Harry has been raised, Dumbledore said, his piercing gaze returning to Harry. No wonder the magical signature that led me here was so unusual. You have been shaped by this place, haven't you, my boy? Harry nodded cautiously. I've been here since I was a baby. It's home. Something like sadness passed briefly over Dumbledore's face, but he smiled nonetheless. Then I am grateful to those who have made it so, however, unorthodox the circumstances of your arrival. The group began moving toward the city, the elf guards maintaining a careful formation around Dumbledore. Harry found himself walking beside the wizard, driven by curiosity he couldn't quite suppress. You've really been looking for me all this time, he asked quietly. Every day, Dumbledore confirmed. Though I confess, I never imagined finding you in quite these circumstances. The elven realm has been closed to wizards for centuries. Had anyone told me you were here, I would have dismissed it as fantasy. Why? The question that had burned in Harry for years finally emerged. Why did it matter so much to find me? Because of what happened with Voldemort. Dumbledore's step faltered slightly at the casual use of the name, but he recovered quickly. Partly, he admitted. Your survival that night was unprecedented. Your subsequent disappearance created questions that demanded answers. But more than that, Harry, you are, a child of the wizarding world. Your parents entrusted your safety to me, and I failed in that trust. The simple admission caught Harry off guard. He'd expected justifications, explanations, not a straightforward acknowledgement of failure. The night you disappeared, Dumbledore continued, his voice softer now, meant for Harry's ears alone, I placed certain protective enchantments around your aunt's home. Blood magic, based on your mother's sacrifice. When I returned the next morning and found you gone, the blanket empty, my letter untouched, I feared the worst. That Death Eaters had somehow breached those protections and taken you. But it was Dobby, Harry said. Indeed. A possibility I never considered, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. House elves are frequently underestimated, even by those who should know better. A mistake I shall endeavor not to repeat. They reached the outskirts of the elven city, where news of their unusual visitor had clearly spread. Elves lined the pathways, watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility as Dumbledore passed. Your reception seems mixed, the wizard observed mildly. Wizards haven't exactly been kind to elves over the centuries, Harry pointed out. A failing of our society I have long lamented, Dumbledore sighed. Though it seems the separation between our worlds began long before the current inequities. Elder Gorick, walking ahead, glanced back at this. You are more correct than you know, Albus Dumbledore. The full history of the sundering between elves and wizards is not taught in your schools. Perhaps it should be. They arrived at the council tower, where the remaining members awaited them. Harry noticed that the chamber had been hastily rearranged, the scattered maps and projections cleared away, the pile of Hogwarts letters removed from sight. As they entered, Gorick addressed the council. Members of Tir Na Nog, I present Albus Dumbledore, who comes under oath and escort to discuss the matter of Harwin's education. Dumbledore stepped forward and bowed deeply to the assembled elves, a gesture of respect that seemed to surprise many of them. I am honored by your welcome, however cautious it may be, he said. And I am grateful for the care you have shown Harry Potter these past 10 years. Arbor rose from his seat, his bark-like skin creaking slightly as he moved. We did not take the child for your gratitude, wizard. We acted according to our own prophecies and traditions. Prophecies? Dumbledore's eyebrows rose with genuine interest. Fascinating. The wizarding world has its own prophecy regarding Harry, though its contents are known to few. A ripple of murmurs passed through the council. Harry felt a chill. Two prophecies, from two different worlds, both centered on him. "That is a matter for another time," Gorick said firmly. "We are here to address the immediate question, Hogwarts." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed easily. "Harry's place at the school has been reserved since birth, as is the case for all magical children in Britain. Now that he has reached the age of 11, it is customary for him to begin his formal education." "Harwin has been receiving formal education for years," Lyrian pointed out, gesturing to Harry. "He is well versed in magical theory, practice, and history, from the elven perspective. And there lies both the opportunity and the challenge," Dumbledore said. "Harry Potter stands at a unique crossroads, heir to both human and elven magical traditions. At Hogwarts, he could integrate that knowledge, becoming perhaps the first true bridge between our worlds in centuries." Harry listened to them debate his future as if he weren't present. It was frustrating, yet familiar. The council had often discussed the prophecy child as a concept rather than addressing him directly. "I want to go," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the discussion. All eyes turned to him, elven and human alike. "I want to learn about that part of who I am," Harry continued, more confidently now that he had their attention. "I want to know about my parents, about wizard magic. I want to understand both worlds, not just one." "You wish to leave Tir na Nog?" Arbor asked, his tone making the question sound like an accusation. "Not forever," Harry shook his head firmly. "This is my home. You're my family. But I need to do this." Dobby stepped forward, standing at Harry's side. "If Harry Potter wishes to attend the wizard school, Dobby will accompany him. Dobby will ensure Harry Potter's safety and connection to Tir na Nog." "As will I," Nippy declared, moving to Harry's other side. "Someone needs to make sure he doesn't forget his elven training while he's learning all those silly wand movements." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with amusement, but his voice was serious when he spoke. "The presence of elves at Hogwarts would be unprecedented in recent memory. There would be complications." "There will be complications regardless," Gorick pointed out. "Harwin is not a typical wizard child. His magic has been shaped by Tir na Nog. His methods are not yours. And his loyalty," the elder elf gave Harry a small, proud smile, "is admirably divided." "A fair assessment," Dumbledore conceded. "But there are practical matters to consider. Harry's absence from the wizarding world has created a vacuum of sorts. His return will generate intense interest, scrutiny, perhaps even danger. The Death Eaters who found your borders 6 months ago were not acting alone." Harry's head snapped up at this. "You know about that?" "I make it my business to know when Lucius Malfoy and his associates undertake unexplained expeditions into remote Scottish forests," Dumbledore said with a slight smile. "Especially when they return with no memory of where they've been or what they were seeking." Harry exchanged glances with Nippy. The memory modification had worked, then. "You speak of danger," Gorick said, bringing the conversation back to its focus. "Yet you would have Harwin leave the protection of Tir na Nog." "Hogwarts has its own protections," Dumbledore replied. "Different from yours, but effective. And there is another consideration: Harry must learn to navigate the wizarding world eventually. Better under controlled circumstances than being thrust into it unprepared." Harry could see the council members considering this argument. Even Arbor, the most resistant to human connections, seemed to be wavering. "If I go," Harry said, seizing the moment, "it needs to be on terms that respect both worlds. I'm not choosing between them. I'm trying to honor both parts of who I am." Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully. "What terms did you have in mind, Harry?" Harry took a deep breath, organizing the thoughts that had been forming since the first Hogwarts letter arrived. "First, Dobby and Nippy come with me, even if they have to stay hidden from most people. Second, I need a way to return to Tir na Nog regularly, not just during school breaks. And third," he looked directly at Dumbledore, "no one can know where I've been all these years. Not yet. Tir na Nog's existence stays secret. Dumbledore stroked his long beard, considering. The first two may be arranged, with certain accommodations. As for the third, a story will need to be crafted to explain your absence. The truth, as is often the case, may need to be, selectively presented. I don't want to lie, Harry frowned. Not lies, Dumbledore assured him. Simply a focus on what can be shared safely. That you were raised in a magical community, protected and educated. That details must remain confidential for security reasons. The wizarding world is quite accustomed to necessary secrecy. Elder Gorick tapped his staff thoughtfully. There is precedent for controlled interaction between our realms. In ancient times, certain wizards were permitted knowledge of Tir na Nog under binding oaths. Perhaps a limited revival of that tradition would be appropriate. The council erupted into discussion at this suggestion, some vehemently opposed, others cautiously supportive. Harry watched the debate unfold, feeling both the weight of the decision and a growing excitement at the possibilities ahead. Finally, Gorick raised his hand for silence. We will put it to a formal vote. But first, Harwin, step forward. Harry moved to the center of the chamber, conscious of all eyes upon him. You have been raised in our ways, Gorick said solemnly. You have learned our magic, our history, our values. If you enter the wizard world, you carry something of Tir na Nog with you. Do you understand the responsibility this entails? I do, Harry said firmly. And you, Albus Dumbledore, Gorick turned to the wizard. If we entrust one of our own to your school, do you vow to respect his dual heritage? To allow his continued connection to Tir na Nog? To protect the secrecy of our realm until such time as we collectively decide otherwise? Dumbledore drew himself up to his full height. I so vow, he said, his magic visibly responding to the solemnity of the moment. Harry's unique position will be respected. His connections maintained. And your realm's secrecy preserved. Gorick nodded, satisfied. Then let us vote. The vote, when tallied, was 9 in favor to 4 opposed, a clearer majority than Harry had expected. The path to Hogwarts was open. It is decided, Gorick announced. Harwin will attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, accompanied by his guardians, with regular returns to Tir na Nog. Albus Dumbledore will ensure these conditions are met. Dumbledore bowed his acceptance. Term begins September 1st. There is much to arrange before then. Harry felt a strange mixture of emotions, excitement, nervousness, sadness at the coming separation from his home. But above all, a sense that this was right, that the next step in his journey was unfolding as it should. When do we start? He asked. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. How do you feel about a trip to Diagon Alley? The plan for Harry's first venture into the wizarding world was crafted with meticulous care. Harry would travel with Dobby, Nippy, and Dumbledore, visiting Diagon Alley to purchase his school supplies. To avoid immediate recognition, he would wear a lightweight glamour, not enough to completely change his appearance, but sufficient to obscure his distinctive scar and slightly alter his facial features. The goal is not deception, Dumbledore explained as they prepared for the journey, but privacy. Time to acclimate before facing the full weight of your fame. Elder Gorick had insisted on adding his own protections, a pendant of elven crystal that would allow Harry to maintain contact with Tir na Nog while in the human world. It hung around his neck, cool against his skin, a constant reminder of his first home. The pendant has another function, Gorick told Harry privately. Should you face true danger, squeeze it while focusing your intent, and it will create a temporary portal home. Use it only in dire need, such magic draws attention. The journey would begin not from Tir na Nog directly, but from a transition point Dumbledore had arranged, a small wizard cottage on the outskirts of a place called Hogsmeade, connected to the Fleur network. From there, we can travel directly to the Leaky Cauldron, Dumbledore explained. A wizard pub that serves as the entrance to Diagon Alley. Harry had listened to all these explanations with growing excitement, but now, as they prepared to depart, a wave of nervousness swept over him. He stood at the edge of Tir Na Nog, saying goodbyes to those who had come to see them off. "Remember your training," Elder Gorick said, placing a gnarled hand on Harry's shoulder. "Especially the shielding techniques. Your mind will be as foreign to them as your magic." "I will," Harry promised. "And write to us," Lyrian added, pressing a special parchment into his hands. "This paper is linked to its twin in the council chamber. What you write upon it will appear there, and our responses likewise." "Thanks," Harry smiled, touched by their thoughtfulness. More goodbyes followed, well wishes from teachers, friends, even Arbor, who gruffly instructed him to show those wand wavers what real magic looks like. Finally, it was time to go. Dumbledore, who had been waiting patiently at the boundary, stepped forward. "Ready, Harry?" Harry took a deep breath, looking back one last time at the shimmering spires of the elf city, the ancient trees, the magical light that suffused everything. Then he nodded. "Ready." Dumbledore extended a hand, creating an opening in the barrier different from the one Harry and Nippy had found or the Death Eaters had forced. This was a proper doorway, respectful of the boundary while allowing controlled passage. They stepped through together, Harry, Dobby, Nippy, and Dumbledore, into the mundane forest of the human world. The transition was jarring. The visible magic that permeated Tir Na Nog was gone, leaving the world looking strangely flat and dull to Harry's eyes. Even the air felt different, heavier, less alive with possibility. "You'll adjust," Dumbledore said gently, noticing Harry's discomfort. "The magic is still here, just expressed differently." They walked for about 20 minutes, Dumbledore leading them through the forest with unerring confidence despite the lack of visible path. Finally, they emerged at the edge of a small village, Hogsmeade, Harry presumed. "We'll skirt around rather than going through," Dumbledore explained. "Less chance of being recognized that way." The cottage was small and unassuming, its thatched roof and stone walls making it look centuries old. Inside, however, it was comfortably furnished with plush armchairs, bookshelves filled with ancient tomes, and a cheerfully crackling fire despite the summer warmth outside. "My occasional retreat," Dumbledore explained as he moved to the fireplace. "For when the demands of Hogwarts become overwhelming." He took a small pot from the mantelpiece, removing its lid to reveal a glittering green powder. "Floo powder," he explained to their questioning looks. "A common wizard transportation method. You step into the fireplace, throw down the powder while clearly stating your destination, and the fire transports you there." Nippy looked horrified. "You want us to set ourselves on fire?" "Not exactly," Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "The flames become harmless when the powder is used. Observe." He demonstrated, stepping into the fireplace, throwing down a pinch of powder, and clearly saying, "The leaky cauldron." Green flames whooshed up around him, and in an instant, he vanished. "That's wizard transportation?" Harry asked, both impressed and slightly nauseated at the prospect. No wonder elves prefer their methods. "Will Harry Potter be safe?" Dobby fretted, eyeing the fireplace suspiciously. "I'll be fine," Harry assured his guardian, with more confidence than he felt. Dumbledore wouldn't suggest it if it weren't safe. One by one, they followed Dumbledore's example. Harry went first, forcing himself to step into the fireplace, throw down the powder, and clearly say, "The leaky cauldron." The sensation that followed was deeply unpleasant, spinning, being pulled in all directions, glimpses of other fireplaces flashing past. Just when he thought he might be sick, it stopped abruptly, and he stumbled out into a dimly lit pub. Dumbledore caught his arm, steadying him. "Well done," the wizard said quietly. "The first time is always the most difficult." Dobby and Nippy arrived moments later, both looking distinctly green around the edges and muttering about barbaric wizard travel. Nippy had taken the precaution of using a minor concealment charm to make herself appear more like a house elf, as her distinctive appearance would have raised too many questions. The leaky cauldron was busy but not crowded. A few patrons glanced their way as they entered, but Dumbledore's glamour charm held, none seemed to recognize Harry, and the presence of what appeared to be two house elves didn't raise eyebrows in a wizard establishment. "This way," Dumbledore murmured, guiding them through the pub to a small courtyard at the back. There, he faced a blank brick wall, tapped a specific pattern with his wand, and stepped back as the bricks rearranged themselves, forming an archway. Beyond lay Diagon Alley. Harry had heard descriptions of the wizarding shopping district from Dobby, had seen glimpses in the scrying pools of Tir Na Nog, but nothing had prepared him for the sensory explosion that greeted him. The narrow, winding street was lined with the most peculiar assortment of shops, their windows displaying everything from cauldrons and broomsticks to strange, writhing plants and caged creatures he couldn't identify. Witches and wizards in robes of every color hustled past, some leading children about Harry's age who were clearly also shopping for school supplies. Overhead, owls swooped between buildings, carrying packages and letters. Street vendors called out the virtues of their wares, self-stirring cauldrons, color-changing ink, treats that made the eater levitate briefly. "Wow," Harry breathed, trying to take it all in. "Indeed," Dumbledore smiled. "Rather overwhelming on first exposure, I imagine. Shall we begin with Gringotts? You'll need funds for your purchases." "Gringotts?" Harry asked, following as Dumbledore led them into the crowd. "The Wizard Bank," Dumbledore explained. "Run by goblins. Your parents left you quite well provided for, Harry." This was news to Harry. He'd never thought about money in Tir Na Nog. The elven economy operated on principles of shared resources and magical contribution rather than currency. The idea that he had wizard gold waiting for him was strange but intriguing. Gringotts dominated the far end of the alley, a towering white marble building with burnished bronze doors. As they approached, Harry noticed the small, clever-faced creatures standing guard. They reminded him a bit of the mining elves of Tir Na Nog's eastern caverns, but with a sharper, more avaricious look to them. "Goblins," Nippy whispered unnecessarily. "They broke ties with all elf-kind centuries ago." Inside, the bank was a vast marble hall with long counters stretching along both sides, staffed by more goblins weighing coins, examining jewels, and processing transactions. Dumbledore led them directly to a counter where an elderly goblin peered at them over half-moon spectacles not unlike the headmaster's own. "We wish to access Harry Potter's vault," Dumbledore said quietly, producing a small golden key. The goblin's eyes widened fractionally, his gaze darting to Harry despite the glamour. "I see," he said slowly. "And does Mr. Potter have his key?" "I am acting as his magical guardian for the moment," Dumbledore explained smoothly. "The key has been in the school's safekeeping." The goblin examined the key carefully, then nodded. "Very well. Griphook will take you down." The cart ride to the vault was another new experience for Harry, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure as they plunged deep beneath London at breakneck speed. Dobby clung to the side of the cart, eyes squeezed shut, while Nippy whooped with delight at every hairpin turn. When the vault door swung open, Harry couldn't suppress a gasp. Mounds of gold, silver, and bronze coins filled the spacious chamber, more money than he could have imagined. "Your parents ensured you would never want," Dumbledore said softly. James came from old wizard money, and both he and Lily were quite successful in their brief careers. Harry stepped into the vault, a lump forming in his throat. This was his inheritance, not just money, but a tangible connection to the parents he'd never known. "There's so much," he said quietly. "I don't even know how much I need." "Allow me to suggest an amount for today's purchases," Dumbledore offered. "The gold coins are galleons, the silver are sickles, and the bronze are nuts. 29 nuts to a sickle, 17 sickles to a galleon." With a small money pouch filled, which felt strangely heavy for its size, they returned to the surface and began the process of purchasing Harry's school supplies. Dumbledore suggested a logical route through the alley, starting with the basics. At Flourish and Blots, Harry purchased his required textbooks, plus a few extras that caught his interest, a history of magical cooperation between species, and alternative magical traditions around the world. Supplementary reading. Dumbledore asked with a knowing smile. Research, Harry replied. I want to understand how things got the way they are between wizards and other magical beings. Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions was next, where Harry was measured for his school uniform. As he stood on a footstool, another boy about his age was being fitted nearby, pale, pointed face, white blonde hair slicked back from his forehead. Hogwarts too? The boy asked, his tone bored but curious. Yes, Harry replied cautiously. First year. Me too. Father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands. The boy's voice had a drawling quality that immediately put Harry on edge. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry was reminded uncomfortably of some of the higher status elf children who had looked down on him during his early years in Tir Na Nog. The sense of entitlement was identical across species. Have you got your own broom? The boy continued. No, Harry said, wondering if all wizard children were this focused on material possessions. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said again, deciding not to mention that while he didn't know this Quidditch, he was quite skilled at thimblewing, the elven aerial sport played on enchanted leaves rather than broomsticks. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say, I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet? No, Harry said for the third time, growing increasingly irritated. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin, all our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? I don't think any house would be that bad, Harry replied diplomatically, though the truth was he had only a vague understanding of the Hogwarts house system from Dobby's descriptions. I say, look at that man. The boy said suddenly, nodding toward the window where Dumbledore stood waiting, examining a display of color-changing socks with apparent fascination. That's Professor Dumbledore, Harry said. He's the headmaster at Hogwarts. Oh, the boy looked surprised and slightly cowed. I've heard of him, of course. Is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, Harry said shortly. Oh, sorry, the boy said, not sounding sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? Harry tensed. If you mean were they magical, yes. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same, they've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter, imagine. I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. Harry was saved from responding by Madame Malkin announcing that the boy's robes were finished. The boy hopped down from his footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, he said. As he left, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just met a young version of the Death Eaters who had tried to breach Tir Na Nog. The same prejudice, the same sense of superiority. It was discouraging to think such attitudes extended to children his own age. Who was that? He asked Nippy, who had been lurking in the corner of the shop, partially concealed. Trouble, she whispered back. He smells like that Malfoy wizard who tried to curse me. Harry's eyes widened. You think that was Draco Malfoy? Lucius Malfoy's son? Has to be. Same awful aura. The rest of their shopping proceeded more pleasantly. At the apothecary, Harry was fascinated by the array of potion ingredients, many of which resembled elements used in elven healing but prepared quite differently. At the cauldron shop, he selected a standard pewter cauldron while Nippy muttered about the superiority of elven crystalline brewing vessels. Their second-to-last stop was Ollivander's, the wandmaker's shop. This was the part Harry had been both anticipating and dreading. In Tir Na Nog, he'd learned wandless magic, shaping spells through pure intent and the direction of his magical core. The idea of channeling that power through a wooden stick felt simultaneously limiting and dangerously focusing. The shop was narrow and shabby, with a single wand on a faded purple cushion in the window. As they entered, a bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop. The space felt ancient and filled with a strange, tingling energy that made the hairs on Harry's arms stand up. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice. An old man stood before them, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. "Ah, Mr. Ollivander," Dumbledore said pleasantly. "A pleasure, as always." Albus Dumbledore, the wand-maker nodded. "Oak, 14 inches, unusually flexible. Still serving you well?" "Indeed it is, though these days I find myself using a different wand, as you know." "Yes. Yes, of course." Ollivander's attention shifted to Harry, those eerie eyes widening. "And this must be, yes. I've been expecting you, Mr. Potter." Harry blinked in surprise. Despite the glamour, Ollivander had recognized him immediately. "Your disguise may fool ordinary eyes," Ollivander said, as if reading Harry's thoughts, "but to one who has spent a lifetime attuned to magical signatures, well. Your mother's eyes, unmistakable. Lily Evans. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work." He moved closer to Harry, peering at him with unnerving intensity. "Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. Excellent for transfiguration." Ollivander reached out a pale finger toward Harry's forehead, stopping just short of touching the concealed scar. "And that's where. I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it. 13½ inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands, well, if I'd known what that wand was going out into the world to do." He shook his head, then seemed to notice Dobby and Nippy for the first time. His silvery eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting companions you keep, Mr. Potter. Not house elves, I think, at least, not both of them. Curiouser and curiouser." Dumbledore cleared his throat. "Perhaps we might proceed with finding Harry his wand." Of course, of course." Ollivander pulled a long tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. "Which is your wand arm, Mr. Potter?" Harry hesitated. He'd been trained to channel magic equally through both hands. "I'm right-handed, I suppose," he said finally. The tape measure began taking measurements on its own, arm length, wrist to elbow, shoulder to finger, around his head, while Ollivander moved among the shelves, pulling down boxes. "Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand." Harry nodded, though privately he wondered if that was entirely true. Elven magic taught that intent mattered more than the tool. "That will do," Ollivander said, and the tape measure crumpled to the floor. "Right then, Mr. Potter. Try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave." Harry took the wand, feeling immediately that something was wrong. The wood seemed to recoil from his touch, as if sensing his elven-influenced magic. Nevertheless, he waved it, only to have Ollivander snatch it back almost at once. "Maple and phoenix feather. 7 inches. Quite whippy." Harry tried, but had barely raised the wand when Ollivander snatched it back as well. "No, no, here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8½ inches, springy. Go on, try it out." Harry tried, and tried, and tried. The pile of discarded wands mounted higher and higher, but rather than growing frustrated, Ollivander seemed to become more excited with each failure. "Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere, I wonder, now, yes, why not, unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." As soon as Harry took this wand, he felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. When he raised it above his head, red and gold sparks shot from its end like fireworks, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Dumbledore clapped politely, and Ollivander cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed, oh, very good." Yet Harry could tell something still wasn't quite right. The wand had responded to him, yes, but there was resistance, as if it recognized his wizarding core but was confused by the elven influence. "Curious," Ollivander said, placing the wand back in its box. "Most curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, though he suspected he knew. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed hard. "Voldemort's wand." "The Dark Lord's, yes," Ollivander whispered. "But there is something else curious here, Mr. Potter. This wand has chosen you, yes, and yet, there is hesitation. As if it senses something in you that it does not fully understand. May I ask, where exactly have you been these past 10 years? Dumbledore stepped forward smoothly. "I'm afraid that information must remain confidential, Garrick. For Harry's safety." Of course," Ollivander murmured, though his silver eyes remained fixed on Harry with unsettling intensity. "But know this, Mr. Potter, that wand will serve you well, but it may need time to adjust to the unique nature of your magic." Harry paid 7 gold galleons for his wand, and Ollivander bowed them from his shop, still muttering, "Curious, most curious." As they left. Their final stop was Elop's Owl Emporium, where Dumbledore suggested Harry might want to purchase an owl. "They're the most common form of wizard communication," he explained. "Useful for keeping in touch when you're not using your special parchment." Inside the dim, rustling shop, Harry was immediately drawn to a beautiful snowy owl who regarded him with intelligent amber eyes. When he approached her cage, she gave a soft hoot and extended one wing slightly, as if in greeting. "She's beautiful," Harry said, reaching a finger through the bars. To his surprise, the owl rubbed her head against it gently. "A fine choice," the shopkeeper nodded approvingly. "Smart too, that one. Been here a while, seems picky about who she'll go with." The snowy owl came home with them, along with a cage and owl treats. Harry decided to name her Hedwig, after a famous elf healer mentioned in one of his history books. As they made their way back through Diagon Alley toward the leaky cauldron, Harry felt a curious mixture of excitement and unease. The wizarding world was fascinating, vibrant, full of wonders, and yet, he'd also glimpsed its darker aspects in the prejudice of the Malfoy boy and the lingering shadow of Voldemort. "A successful expedition, I think," Dumbledore observed as they paused for ice cream at Florian Fortescue's. "You've acquired everything you need for your first year." "It's all so different from what I'm used to," Harry admitted, watching Nippy cautiously taste her mint chocolate chip ice cream. "Elves do magic so differently." "Different does not mean inferior," Dumbledore said gently. "Nor superior, for that matter. Simply different approaches to the same fundamental forces. I suspect you, Harry, are uniquely positioned to appreciate the strengths of both traditions." Harry nodded, his mind already turning to the challenges ahead. In less than a month, he would be boarding the Hogwarts Express, entering a school filled with children who had grown up in the wizarding world, who knew its customs and traditions in a way he did not. Yet he also carried knowledge they lacked, the ancient wisdom of Tir Na Nog, magic that flowed from intent rather than rigid spells, perspectives on magical cooperation that had been lost to wizardkind centuries ago. "I feel like I'm being pulled in 2 directions, he admitted quietly. "Perhaps," Dumbledore said thoughtfully, "you are not being pulled apart, but rather serving as a bridge. Connections between worlds are rarely comfortable positions, Harry, but they are invariably important ones." The remaining weeks before term began passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Harry split his time between Tir Na Nog and Dumbledore's cottage, where the headmaster provided crash courses in wizard culture, customs, and basic spell techniques. "Your wandless abilities are extraordinary," Dumbledore observed after watching Harry demonstrate elven shielding magic. But at Hogwarts, you'll be expected to use your wand. It would be wise to practice channeling your magic through it before term begins. Harry had struggled initially. The wand felt like an unnecessary restriction, forcing his magic through a narrow channel when he was accustomed to directing it freely. But gradually, he'd begun to appreciate its focusing effect, how it could make precise spells more controllable, more directed. Now, the day before his departure for Hogwarts, Harry sat cross-legged in his room in Tir Na Nog, the holly wand balanced across his palms. He'd been attempting to reconcile his two magical approaches, to find a way of using the wand that honored his elven training while adapting to wizard methods. "Still fighting with it?" Nippy asked from the doorway. Harry looked up, smiling ruefully. "Not fighting exactly. More like, negotiating." She crossed the room, sitting beside him. "Do you really need it? Your magic works fine without it." "It's not about need," Harry explained. "It's about belonging. If I go to Hogwarts and refuse to use a wand, I'll stand out immediately. And after everything Dumbledore and Gorick have said about keeping Tir Na Nog secret." "I get it," Nippy sighed. "Blend in, don't make waves, protect the realm. Doesn't mean I have to like it." "Me neither," Harry admitted. "But I'm starting to see what Dumbledore meant about the wand focusing magic. Watch." He picked up the wand, concentrating on a simple light spell he'd learned in Tir Na Nog. Normally, he'd cup his hands and focus his intent, allowing light to bloom between his palms. Now, he channeled that same intent through the wand. "Lumos," he whispered, the wizard incantation Dumbledore had taught him, though in his mind he maintained the elven visualization. The wand tip ignited with a brilliance that startled them both, not the usual gentle wizard light but something brighter, purer, with a faint blue-green tint reminiscent of Tir Na Nog's ambient magic. "Whoa," Nippy breathed. "That's not what wizard light looks like." "No," Harry agreed, staring at the glowing wand. "It's a hybrid. Wizard focus with elven intent." He ended the spell with a thought, feeling a small surge of satisfaction. Perhaps this was the way forward, not choosing between traditions, but finding the strengths in both. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dobby entered, carrying a small wooden box. "Elder Gorick sends this for Harry Potter," the house elf said, placing the box on the bed. "A gift before tomorrow's journey." Harry opened the box carefully. Inside lay a braided cord of silvery green material that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. When he lifted it, he could feel the magic woven into each strand. "A memory cord," Nippy explained, looking impressed. "They're really rare. Elders make them for important journeys." "What does it do?" Harry asked, running the silky material through his fingers. "It helps you remember who you are, where you came from," she explained. "If you're ever confused or lost or forgetting something important, it helps bring clarity. It's meant to be worn against the skin, usually around the wrist." Harry slipped it over his hand immediately, feeling a warm pulse as it settled against his wrist. For a moment, vivid images flashed through his mind, his first successful magic lesson with Gorick, swimming in the glowing pools with Nippy, Dobby teaching him to make starfruit tarts in their kitchen. "It's perfect," he said softly. "I'll never take it off." The door opened again, and Elder Gorick himself entered, leaning on his staff. "I see you've received my gift," he said, smiling at the cord around Harry's wrist. "May it serve as a tether between worlds when physical distance separates you from us." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely. "For everything. All the training, the guidance. I wouldn't be ready for this without you." "You will never be fully ready, Harwin," Gorick said, lowering himself onto the edge of the bed. "No one ever is for new journeys. But you are prepared, as much as anyone could be." He fixed Harry with his ancient, knowing gaze. "Tomorrow you enter the world of your birth with the knowledge and values of the world of your raising. Both make you who you are. Never forget that." "I won't," Harry promised, touching the memory cord. Remember also that while wands and incantations have their place, the truest magic comes from intent. From the heart and mind working in harmony. The wizards have forgotten much of this. Perhaps you can help them remember. Harry nodded solemnly. The weight of expectations, from both worlds, sometimes felt overwhelming. Yet he couldn't deny the excitement building within him at the prospect of this new adventure. Get some rest, Gorick advised, rising with a slight stiffness that reminded Harry of the elder's great age. Tomorrow begins a new chapter in your story, and perhaps, in the story of both our worlds. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity, families saying goodbyes, students reuniting after the summer, owls hooting and cats winding between legs. The scarlet steam engine of the Hogwarts Express gleamed in the morning light, puffs of white smoke drifting skyward. Harry stood just inside the magical barrier, momentarily overwhelmed by the noise and chaos. Beside him, Dobby and Nippy, both now glamoured to appear as ordinary house elves, gazed around with similar expressions of wonder and wariness. Remember the plan, Dumbledore had told them before departing for Hogwarts ahead of them. Harry boards openly as a student. Dobby and Nippy travel concealed in the last compartment, which I've arranged to remain empty. At Hogwarts, quarters have been prepared where you can meet privately. The platform was crowded with families, wizard parents hugging children, giving last-minute instructions, helping with trunks and pets. Harry felt a pang of something like envy, quickly followed by gratitude for his own unusual family. Dobby had been fussing over him all morning, checking and rechecking his trunk, straightening his muggle clothes, another strange adaptation. In Tir Na Nog, he'd worn elven-style tunics and leggings. Harry Potter must write to Dobby, the house elf was saying now, his tennis ball eyes brimming with tears. Harry Potter must be careful. Harry Potter must remember his training. I will, Dobby, Harry promised, bending down to hug his guardian fiercely. I'll write every week. And I'll see you at Hogwarts tonight. We'll be fine, Nippy added, though she looked less certain than her words suggested. Just focus on blending in. Don't do anything too, Elven. Harry grinned at her. I'll try to restrain myself from growing flowers with my laughter or singing to the trees. This is serious, she protested, but a smile tugged at her lips. Just, be careful, okay? Wizard children can be cruel if they think you're different. I know, Harry sobered, remembering the Malfoy boy from Madame Malkin's. But I've dealt with that before, remember? Those first years in Tir Na Nog weren't exactly easy. A whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. Around them, families were making final farewells, students climbing aboard the train. Time to go, Harry said, his heart suddenly racing with nerves and excitement. You two know what to do. Dobby and Nippy nodded. They would board the train last, using elven concealment to reach the rear compartment Dumbledore had arranged for them. Harry took a deep breath, picked up Hedwig's cage in one hand and dragged his trunk with the other. See you at Hogwarts, he said, then turned and made his way through the crowd toward the train. Finding an empty compartment proved challenging. Harry moved through the corridors, glancing through glass doors at compartments already filled with chattering students. Finally, near the middle of the train, he found one occupied only by a round-faced boy who was searching frantically under the seats. Excuse me, Harry said, sliding the door open. Is it okay if I join you? The boy looked up, his expression harried. Oh, sure. I'm just looking for my toad. Trevor. He keeps getting away from me. I could help you look, Harry offered, stowing his trunk in Hedwig's cage. Would you? Gran will kill me if I lose him on the first day. The boy looked pathetically grateful. I'm Neville, by the way. Neville Longbottom. Harry Potter, Harry replied, then immediately wondered if he should have used an alias when Neville's eyes widened to the size of saucers. Harry Potter. Really? But you're. I mean, everyone thought you were. Missing, yeah, Harry said awkwardly. It's a long story. Wow, Neville breathed, momentarily forgetting his toad. "Wait until everyone finds out you're here." "Actually," Harry said quickly, "I'd rather not make a big deal about it right away. I'm just trying to have a normal first day, you know." Neville blinked, then nodded. "Oh, right. Of course. That makes sense." He glanced around as if suddenly remembering. "Trevor. I should keep looking for Trevor." They searched the compartment thoroughly, but the toad was nowhere to be found. "He must have hopped out into the corridor," Neville sighed. "I should check the other compartments." "I'll help," Harry offered, glad for the distraction from Neville's odd looks. They split up, Harry taking the front of the train while Neville went toward the back. As Harry moved from compartment to compartment, asking if anyone had seen a toad, he couldn't help noticing the range of reactions he received, from blank stares to dismissive laughs to genuine offers of help. In one compartment, he encountered a familiar face, the bushy-haired girl from the forest edge near Hogwarts. Hermione Granger. Her eyes widened in recognition, but before she could say anything, Harry raised a finger to his lips in a plea for discretion. "I'm helping Neville find his toad," he explained loudly for the benefit of the other students in the compartment. "Have any of you seen it?" "No," said a freckled, red-haired boy sitting across from Hermione. "But good luck." As Harry turned to leave, Hermione jumped up. "I'll help you look," she announced. "4 eyes are better than 2. In the corridor, she immediately rounded on him. "It is you," she whispered fiercely. "The boy from the forest, with the elf." "Harry, you said your name was." "Harry Potter," he confirmed quietly. "And yes, that was me. But I'd appreciate if you didn't mention the, circumstances of our first meeting to anyone." Her eyes, already wide, grew impossibly wider. "Harry Potter? The Harry Potter? But you disappeared years ago. Everyone thought you were dead or kidnapped or," she broke off, clearly connecting dots. "The elf. The elf took you, didn't she? That's why no one could find you." "It's complicated," Harry said, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "And really not something I can talk about here. But yes, I've been away. And now I'm back to attend Hogwarts." Hermione studied him with intense curiosity. "You were raised by elves," she said finally, not a question but a statement. "That's why your magic felt different in the forest." Harry stared at her, impressed despite his alarm. "How could you tell?" "I couldn't, not specifically," she admitted. "But I could sense something wasn't standard. I've read about magical signatures in Advanced Magical Theory, though it said only trained wizards can usually detect them." She frowned. "I shouldn't have been able to sense yours at all." "Maybe you're just exceptionally perceptive," Harry suggested, though privately he wondered if his elven-influenced magic was more detectable than he'd hoped. "Maybe," she said, not sounding convinced. "But don't worry, I won't tell anyone what I saw. Though I have about 1,000,000 questions." "I'm sure you do," Harry smiled, finding her intense curiosity oddly endearing. "And maybe someday I can answer them. But for now, we're looking for Neville's toad," she finished for him. "Right. I'll take the next few compartments." They continued the search, eventually meeting up with a dejected Neville near the middle of the train. "No luck," the round-faced boy sighed. "He'll turn up eventually, I suppose." "He always does." They returned to Neville's compartment, now joined by Hermione, who immediately launched into a detailed account of everything she'd read about Hogwarts. Harry listened with half an ear, fascinated by her enthusiasm but distracted by his own thoughts. The landscape outside the window was changing, city giving way to countryside. They were heading north, toward Scotland, toward Hogwarts. With every mile, Harry felt the pull of 2 worlds, the one he was leaving behind and the one he was racing toward. His hand moved unconsciously to touch the memory cord around his wrist, hidden beneath his sleeve. Instantly, a sense of calm washed over him, along with crystal-clear memories of Tir Na Nog. He wasn't leaving his first home behind, not really. He was extending its influence into a new realm, becoming the bridge Gorick and Dumbledore both believed he could be. The compartment door slid open, interrupting Hermione's recitation of Hogwarts facts. 3 boys entered, the pale, pointed-faced Malfoy from Madame Malkin's, flanked by 2 larger, thuggish-looking boys. "Is it true?" Malfoy demanded without preamble. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment." "So it's you, is it?" Harry nodded slowly, studying the trio with caution. The 2 larger boys stood like bodyguards on either side of Malfoy, reminiscent of how Lucius Malfoy had positioned Crabbe and Goyle during their attempt to breach Tir na Nog. "Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle," Malfoy said carelessly, noticing Harry's gaze. "And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." The red-haired boy who had followed them and gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it. Instead, he rose to his feet, meeting Malfoy's eyes directly. "I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks," he said coolly. Malfoy's pale cheeks flushed pink. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter," he said slowly. "Unless you're a bit politer you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them, either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys, and it'll rub off on you." Both Neville and the Weasley boy stood up at this. "Say that again," the red-haired boy said, his face as red as his hair. "Oh, you're going to fight us, are you?" Malfoy sneered. "Unless you get out now," Harry said, more bravely than he felt. 3 against 3, not terrible odds, but Harry was keenly aware that he couldn't use his elven magic openly. "But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food and you still seem to have some." Goyle reached toward a pile of chocolate frogs next to Neville. The round-faced boy leapt forward, but before he could make contact, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Trevor the Toad was hanging from his finger, tiny teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. The large boy swung his hand wildly until Trevor went flying, landing on the window with a small splat before hopping away into Neville's hands. "Clever Toad you've got there, Longbottom," Harry grinned, as Malfoy and his cronies retreated, Goyle howling dramatically. "I didn't know toads could bite," the Weasley boy said, looking impressed. "Most can't," Neville admitted, examining Trevor with wonder. "Trevor's special, I guess." "I'm Ron, by the way," the red-haired boy said to Harry. "Ron Weasley. Nice to meet you," Harry smiled. "And thanks for backing me up with Malfoy." "No problem," Ron shrugged. "His family and mine have never gotten along. Dad says the Malfoys were right in with you-know-who during the war, then claimed they'd been bewitched when he disappeared." Harry's stomach tightened. He knew exactly how true that was, having faced Lucius Malfoy himself at the barrier breach. "So is it true?" Ron asked, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. "You're really Harry Potter? Where have you been all this time? Everyone thought you were dead." "I wasn't dead," Harry said carefully. "Just, somewhere safe." "But where?" Ron pressed. "Was it some secret ministry protection program?" "My dad works at the ministry, but he never mentioned anything like that." "It wasn't the ministry," Harry shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I can't really talk about it. Dumbledore says it's safer if the details stay private." "Dumbledore knows?" Ron looked impressed. "Well, if Dumbledore says so, it must be important. But still, 10 years. Did you even know you were famous?" "Not until recently," Harry admitted. "It's still strange to think about." The conversation was saved from becoming more awkward by the arrival of a witch pushing a food trolley. Harry, eager for the distraction, bought a sampling of everything: chocolate frogs, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, cauldron cakes, pumpkin pasties, and more. As the journey continued, Harry found himself relaxing into the company of his new acquaintances. Ron was straightforward and friendly, happy to explain wizard customs and games. Neville was quiet but kind, though clearly lacking in confidence. Hermione was brilliant and intense, occasionally overwhelming but genuinely interested in everything. None of them were like the elf children he'd grown up with, but Harry found he enjoyed the differences. They represented the world he was entering, a world his parents had been part of, a world he needed to understand if he was ever to fulfill the prophecies that seemed to define his existence. As darkness fell outside, an announcement echoed through the train that they would be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Students scrambled to change into their school robes, buzzing with nervous excitement. Harry touched the memory cord one last time, drawing strength from the connection to Tir Na Nog. Then he pulled on his plain black robes, tucked his wand into his pocket, and prepared to face this new chapter of his life. The first glimpse of Hogwarts took Harry's breath away. The castle perched on a mountain across a vast black lake, its windows sparkling against the starry sky, towers and turrets reaching upward as if to touch the moon itself. "No more N4 to a boat," called a giant of a man who had introduced himself as Hagrid. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville climbed into one of the small fleet waiting at the shore. As the boats glided across the smooth lake, Harry trailed his fingers in the water, sensing the ancient magic that permeated this place. Different from the living, flowing magic of Tir Na Nog, Hogwarts' power felt structured, layered, the accumulated spellwork of centuries of wizards, built upon foundations older still. They passed through a curtain of ivy into an underground harbor, then followed Hagrid up a passageway to emerge on smooth, damp grass in the shadow of the castle. Up a flight of stone steps they went, gathering before huge oak doors where Hagrid knocked 3 times. The doors swung open immediately, revealing a tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes, her stern face instantly recognizable to Harry from the night Dobby had taken him from Privet Drive. "The Fur's years, Professor McGonagall," said Hagrid. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She led them across the flagged stone floor, past a doorway from which hundreds of voices could be heard, and into a small, empty chamber. There, she welcomed them to Hogwarts and explained the sorting ceremony and house system. "The 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin," she told them. "While you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts." Family. The word resonated with Harry. He'd had family in Tir Na Nog, Dobby, Nippy, Elder Gorick, and many others who had raised and taught him. Now he would have a new kind of family, determined by whatever this sorting ceremony revealed about him. "I shall return when we are ready for you," Professor McGonagall said. "Please wait quietly." As she left, the chamber erupted in nervous whispers. Several students were speculating about how exactly they would be sorted. Ron mentioned something about a test that his brothers had told him about, involving wrestling a troll. "That can't be right," Hermione was saying, reciting spells under her breath. The historical accounts in Hogwarts, a history, suggest a much more formalized process. Harry remained silent, focusing on maintaining the mental shields Gorick had taught him. Whatever this sorting involved, he needed to ensure his dual nature, his connection to Tir Na Nog, remained protected. Professor McGonagall returned, instructing them to form a line. Harry found himself between Ron and a sandy-haired boy as they walked through the double doors into the Great Hall. The vast room was lit by thousands of floating candles, with 4 long tables where the rest of the students sat. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers sat. Professor Dumbledore was in the center, his silver beard gleaming in the candlelight. He caught Harry's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Harry looked upward, seeing not a ceiling but a velvety black expanse dotted with stars, an enchantment to reflect the night sky outside, according to Hermione's whisper. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of it, she put a pointed wizard's hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and the hat began to sing, "Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see, I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me." The hat's song explained its purpose, to sort students into the appropriate houses based on their qualities. Gryffindor for the brave, Hufflepuff for the loyal, Ravenclaw for the clever, and Slytherin for the cunning and ambitious. As the hat finished its song, the hall burst into applause. Harry's mind raced. The hat would be placed on their heads to sort them. Would it be able to see his memories of Tir na Nog? Would it sense his elven-influenced magic? Professor McGonagall stepped forward holding a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted," she said. "Abbott, Hannah." A pink-faced girl with blonde pigtails stumbled out of line, put on the hat, and sat down. After a moment's pause, "Hufflepuff," shouted the hat. The table on the right cheered as Hannah went to sit down. The sorting continued, with students being distributed among the 4 houses. Hermione Granger became a Gryffindor, as did Neville Longbottom after a surprisingly long deliberation. Draco Malfoy was immediately sorted into Slytherin, joining Crabbe and Goyle. Then, finally, Potter, Harry. As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out across the hall. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? I thought he was dead." Harry approached the stool, catching a glimpse of hundreds of faces staring up at him before the hat dropped over his eyes, plunging him into darkness. Said a small voice in his ear. "Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? Oh my. Oh my, indeed." The hat's voice had changed, becoming almost awed. "In all my centuries, I've never encountered anything quite like this. A wizard child, yes, but raised in the hidden realm. Shaped by elven magic. The ancient knowledge flows through you, knowledge wizards have forgotten." Harry tensed. The hat could see everything, Tir na Nog, Elder Gorick, Dobby's rescue, all of it. "Don't worry, young Potter," the hat whispered. "Your secrets are safe with me. I cannot reveal what I see in a student's mind, part of the enchantment that made me. But what a challenge you present. Where to put you?" Harry gripped the edges of the stool, unsure what to hope for. "You have qualities for all the houses," the hat continued. "Gryffindor courage in facing the unknown. Ravenclaw's thirst for knowledge across traditions. Hufflepuff loyalty to 2 worlds. Slytherin determination to forge your own path. But where would you flourish? Where would you best fulfill the prophecies that mark you?" Harry thought of his parents, Gryffindors, according to Dumbledore. He thought of Tir na Nog, and the values it had instilled in him. He thought of the bridges he hoped to build between worlds. "Ah, I see your heart's desire," the hat said softly. "To honor both heritages, to learn, to connect what has been sundered. In that case, better be Gryffindor." The hat shouted the last word to the whole hall. Harry removed it and walked shakily toward the Gryffindor table, where the loudest cheering yet erupted. Percy Weasley, Ron's older brother and a prefect, shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry sat down, catching Dumbledore's eye again. The headmaster raised his goblet slightly in a subtle toast. At the high table, Harry also noticed Professor McGonagall giving him a particularly intense look, as if trying to solve a puzzle. The sorting concluded with Ron joining Harry in Gryffindor, looking relieved. Once the last student had been sorted, Dumbledore got to his feet, beaming at the students with his arms opened wide. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you. He sat back down to applause and laughter. Harry wasn't sure whether to laugh or not. Is he, a bit mad? He asked Percy uncertainly. Mad? He's a genius. Best wizard in the world. But yes, a bit mad, I suppose. Potatoes, Harry. Harry's mouth fell open. The dishes in front of him were now piled with food: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, fries, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and peppermint humbugs. The food at Tir na Nog had always been simpler: fresh fruits and vegetables, grains, and occasionally fish from the sacred pools. This abundance of meat and heavy foods was entirely new. Harry took a bit of everything except the humbugs, sampling the unfamiliar flavors cautiously. Around him, conversation flowed freely as students caught up after the summer or introduced themselves to first years. "So where have you been all this time, Harry?" asked Seamus Finnegan, a sandy-haired boy with an Irish accent. "The Daily Prophet runs a story about your disappearance every year on Halloween." All nearby conversations stopped as students turned to hear Harry's answer. "I was somewhere safe," Harry said, repeating his earlier explanation to Ron. "Dumbledore knows all about it, but for security reasons, I can't really discuss the details." "Was it abroad?" "You don't have an accent," observed Dean Thomas, a tall black boy. "Not exactly," Harry hedged. "Just, somewhere outside regular wizard society." "But you knew you were a wizard, right?" Seamus pressed. "Oh, yeah," Harry nodded. "I've been learning magic, just, different kinds than what's taught at Hogwarts." This sparked a flurry of new questions, most of which Harry deflected with vague responses. He was relieved when the desserts appeared, distracting everyone with blocks of ice cream, apple pies, treacle tarts, chocolate eclairs, jam donuts, trifle, strawberries, jello, rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to treacle tart, the talk turned to families. "I'm half and half," said Seamus. "Me dad's a muggle. Mum didn't tell him she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him." The others laughed, and Harry found himself smiling too, though part of him wondered how different the wizarding world might be if such divisions and secrecy weren't the norm. "What about you, Neville?" said Ron. "Well, my gran brought me up and she's a witch," said Neville, "but the family thought I was all muggle for ages. My great-uncle Algy kept trying to catch me off my guard and force some magic out of me." As Neville recounted tales of his magical upbringing, Harry found his attention drawn to the high table, where the teachers were engaged in their own conversations. Professor McGonagall was talking to Dumbledore. A hook-nosed, greasy-haired professor was speaking to a young man in a purple turban. It happened suddenly. The hook-nosed teacher looked past the turban straight into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across Harry's scar. "Ouch!" Harry clapped a hand to his forehead, the pain vanishing as quickly as it had come. "What is it?" asked Percy. Nothing," Harry said quickly, lowering his hand. "Who's that teacher talking to the man in the turban?" "That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. Been after it for years. And that's Professor Quirrell wearing the turban, he got the defense job this year. No wonder he looks so nervous, Snape can be pretty intimidating." Harry watched Snape for a while, but the professor didn't look at him again. Still, the brief pain had been concerning, nothing like that had ever happened in Tir na Nog. At last, the desserts too disappeared, and Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. "Just a few more words now that we are all fed and watered. I have a few start-of-term notices to give you." He proceeded to warn them about the Forbidden Forest, banned items, and, most ominously, a restricted third-floor corridor, to those who do not wish to die a very painful death. "He's not serious," Harry muttered to Percy. "Must be," said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. "It's odd, Because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. The forest's full of dangerous beasts, everyone knows that. The evening concluded with the school song, sung by everyone to different tunes, followed by dismissal to dormitories. Harry followed Percy and the other Gryffindor first years through the chattering crowds, out of the Great Hall, and up the marble staircase. Harry was too tired to be surprised by the moving portraits that lined the walls or the ghostly figure of nearly headless Nick who greeted them along the way. They climbed more staircases, passed through hidden doorways behind tapestries, and finally reached a portrait of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. "Password?" she asked. "Caput Draconis," said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, round room full of squashy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory and the boys through another. At the top of a spiral staircase, they were obviously in one of the towers. They found their beds, 5 four-posters hung with deep red, velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. Too tired to talk much, the boys pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. Harry, however, remained awake for some time after the others had fallen asleep. He needed to meet Dobby and Nippy in the hidden quarters Dumbledore had arranged, but he had to wait until his roommates were soundly sleeping. When deep, steady breathing filled the room, Harry slipped quietly from his bed, pulled on his robe, and crept down the spiral staircase. The common room was deserted now, the fire burned down to embers. Harry exited through the portrait hole, momentarily startling the fat lady. "Out already, are we?" she murmured sleepily. "Just for a bit," Harry whispered. "I'll be back soon." He navigated the darkened corridors carefully, following the directions Dumbledore had given him. Left at the suit of armor that bowed to passers-by. Right at the portrait of the sleeping dragon. Straight ahead to the tapestry of dancing trolls. 3 times past the blank wall opposite, thinking clearly, "I need the place where my friends are waiting." On his third pass, a door materialized in the wall. Harry opened it cautiously, then broke into a grin as he saw Dobby and Nippy inside a cozy chamber that somehow reminded him of their home in Tir na Nog while simultaneously fitting the Hogwarts aesthetic. "Harry Potter came!" Dobby exclaimed, rushing forward to hug him. Dobby was worried Harry Potter might forget. "Of course I didn't forget," Harry laughed, returning the hug before embracing Nippy as well. "How could I? This is the weirdest day of my life. I needed to see some familiar faces." "How was the sorting?" Nippy asked eagerly. "Which house put you in?" "Gryffindor," Harry told them, describing his conversation with the sorting hat. "It knows about Tir na Nog, but it promised to keep the secret." "Did you like the feast?" Dobby asked. Dobby saw the kitchens, hundreds of house elves working there. They were very surprised to meet Dobby and Nippy. "I bet they were," Harry grinned, imagining the reaction of Hogwarts house elves to Dobby's free status and Nippy's unusual appearance despite her glamour. "The food was different than what I'm used to, heavier, more meat. But good." They talked for nearly an hour, Harry recounting everything from the train journey to the sorting to his brief interaction with the other Gryffindor first years. It felt immensely comforting to process the day's events with those who truly understood his unique position. "Dumbledore said you can stay in this room," Harry told them. "It's called the Room of Requirement, it becomes whatever you need it to be. And I can visit whenever I want. And on weekends, we all go back to Tir na Nog," Nippy reminded him. Elder Gorick arranged a secure connection through the Forbidden Forest. Harry nodded, feeling some of his anxiety ease. He wasn't cut off from his first home. He could balance both worlds, exactly as the prophecy suggested he must. "I should get back before anyone notices I'm gone," he said reluctantly. "First day of classes tomorrow." Dobby hugged him again. "Harry Potter will do wonderfully. Harry Potter will show the wizards new ways of thinking about magic. Just remember," Nippy added seriously, "you're not just learning from them, they're learning from you too, whether they realize it or not. You're the bridge, Harry. The bridge." The connection between worlds. As Harry made his way back to Gryffindor Tower, slipping quietly past the dozing fat lady and up to his dormitory, he thought about what that really meant. Tomorrow he would begin classes, learning wizard magic through wands and incantations. But he would approach that learning differently than his classmates, with the foundation of elven magic already ingrained in his being, with the understanding that intent and harmony were as important as the words spoken or movements made. And perhaps, in time, he could share some of that perspective, carefully, subtly at first, then more openly as trust grew. Perhaps he could help wizards remember what they had forgotten, just as the prophecy foretold. Harry climbed back into his four-poster bed, touching the memory cord around his wrist one last time. In his mind, he reached out to Tir na Nog, sensing the faint magical thread that connected him to the elven realm despite the physical distance. To his surprise, he felt a response, a gentle pulse of acknowledgement, as if the very magic of Tir na Nog was reaching back to him. And somewhere, deep in the Forbidden Forest, a seed of elven magic took root, strengthening the connection between the two worlds that Harry Potter bridged. The prophecy child had taken his first steps on a new path, one that might, in time, heal ancient wounds and forge new bonds between worlds long separated. For now, though, Harry simply closed his eyes and fell asleep, dreaming of both his homes at once. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.